OTB AM with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Welcome to OTB AM Friday morning. How are you getting on? Hope all is good. Adrian with you between now and 10 o'clock. Johnny Ward, good morning to you.
Well, you've literally just started this show with this notion in my head of the sound that the pouring of a bottle of wine makes, and it's 7:30. And it's now I'm
Explain the science behind it.
Well, it was not really science. It was the air mixing with the wine.
I also
Absolutely delicious.
The show today was like, I didn't see you there.
It's yourself.
That's I'm necessarily thinking of drinking wine at 7:30 in the morning now.
Well, the team were out last night in Rascals Brewery in Inchicore. Highly recommend it.
Rascals has gotten on board our League of Ireland show this year, so I'll give them another plug. But I do. It's a great spot.
Very good pizza, lovely meat and cheese board. A nice, obviously do an extremely diverse and interesting range of beers. Also do a very nice non-alcoholic beer. Very good experience all around. Colm feels like he's a little bit hungover. He's slightly distracted by something else that's going on. But it wouldn't be the start of Friday's show, Johnny, if Colm wasn't paying attention.
Of course, when you drink in Rascals, you don't get hungover after. It's that type of kind of operation. So,
Sessionable was what Joe introduces last night. The idea, I've never heard this expression before. Sessionable, as in you can drink a load of it.
Yeah, I found that doesn't necessarily work, but Joe may prove me wrong. But the non-alcoholic craft beers are actually excellent.
Right.
Like, they really are. You wouldn't know the difference at times in terms of taste anyway.
So there's a few of the team feeling a little bit sort of sorry for themselves this morning.
Just sorting some technical issues.
I was doing a bit of Zwifting yesterday, Johnny, which I realise now that I sort of throw it out there that you might be a bit snobbish about the idea of Zwifting.
Not at all. I haven't done it, but no, I haven't. But no, and people who don't know, it's basically being on the bike in your room or whatever, rather than being outdoors. But no, my bike's in the shop at the moment, so I'm waiting to get it back. But no, Zwift is brilliant. And like this morning, if you were to go out for a spin this morning, it's 36 kilometres an hour wind. Not very nice. Yeah, so Zwift is.
It's an amazing thing to do. Like 25-30 minute spin. You don't have the whole rigmarole having to sort of prepare yourself to go outside for the conditions and to dress for it and all that sort of stuff.
You're not going to crash either, you know.
Was that to say that you're back in the game, or he's back? He's back.
Yeah.
Back on the bike.
Anything to say about the first 10 minutes of the show?
No, I'm totally fine today, by the way.
Really?
Yeah, I'm totally grand. Well rested, good night, fun happy galore. Any
scandal, like anything that's happened that shouldn't have happened? Or
well, I was gone at about
stuff.
8:30 in preparation, obviously, for the show this morning, so you're asking the wrong man here.
There was talk of Dan and JD repairing elsewhere afterwards. Dan was on the dry last night,
right.
But I don't know, whatever happened there, I guess we'll find out tomorrow.
Find out at some point on the track. We've loads coming for you between now and 10 o'clock this morning. We've plenty of best to cover, and we will do just that. And do, by the way, keep your comments coming into us. We've lots to talk about. We're going to talk about Alan Quinlan is going to join us to pick his 23. If everybody's fit from the Ireland team, who's a 23 for starting a World Cup match tomorrow, the bench is probably much of a good a talking point as any. So we'll get into all that. We'll probably ask him a little bit about the stuff about the Aviva fans situation as well, and whether they're not actually whose phone is that, in the words of the right kid. Is that you, is it? Do you want to just get that microphone changed? Would that be like the worst city in the world? You're thinking about that.
Has the show actually started yet, or are we just
no, we're live. We're live, yeah. Anyway, Jerry Thornley was writing in the Irish Times giving out about the fans and the France game and saying that they just weren't up to it. You were one of them, Johnny, sitting back enjoying yourself.
Well, I mean, I read Jerry Thornley's piece in the Irish Times. I thought it was a really, really good piece. Because you can completely relate to what he's saying. If you watch back the Ireland games, say, I suppose the most handy thing to say is watch the Ireland games in the 80s in Lansdowne Road. Michael Kiernan's drop goal in 85. The noise level and I think there are a couple of things at play here. Ireland in those days was pretty poor, and in terms of sports, it was an amazing achievement for Ireland in those days to win a Triple Crown or beat England. And Ireland was really suffering at the time in terms of people emigrating, and I think sport was a real release. And Lansdowne Road looks more like one of those kind of Soviet like era grounds or whatever, where a lot of people wearing like grey and brown clothes and whatever. Now Ireland is very wealthy. It's one of the wealthiest countries really in the world, and we're also number one in the world in rugby. I think there's a little bit of complacency with that, and I also think the like of me really shouldn't be at Ireland and France. I don't go to enough rugby games to be able to even get a ticket. There was a good moment in the game, I thought, which really summed it up for me. As much as it wasn't a bad atmosphere, I was at 3 rugby games last year, and the atmosphere was terrible.
Just before you go on to that, to tease out the point about you not being there, my view is that that's bullshit. Like, you're absolutely entitled to be there. And also the thing is, right, that people get tickets for games where there's over 50,000 people at the game, or in an All-Ireland sense there's over 80,000 people there. There ain't 80,000 people going to McGrath Cup games, or in the rugby sense, AIL games. So you can't fill stadiums with hardcore rugby people. It's just not going to happen. Which isn't to say that there weren't hardcore rugby people who couldn't get tickets for the game. Totally accept that. And of course, at times, given that there's literally tens of thousands of people there, you're not going to be able to fill it with hardcore rugby fans across the board. So you have to accept that that's going there. There's a bandwagon event element to big stadium games, and there has to be if they're going to sell them out. That's just the way it has to be.
Yeah, although I think in fairness, with this game, they could have sold it out and had nobody on the bandwagon because there's that much interest in it. I mean,
know, but
they probably could have sold 150,000 tickets.
It's not like, what sort of a system could you bring in to ensure that there are 52,000 hardcore rugby people?
It's not. We don't live in an ideal world,
and neither is that right.
Yeah, I get frustrated. Like if I were at all the Galway games, we'll say leading up to an All Ireland final, and couldn't get a ticket, which has happened before. I remember the replay in 2000. That frustrated me. But with this, in fairness, like I paid good money for the tickets that I bought last year. It was the same for this game. It was 135 quid for a ticket, so it was 2 tickets for 270 quid.
You are entitled to be there.
So, there was like, so the man. Rugby's interesting. You get a lot more women at the games, we'll say, than League of Ireland games. So like for me, it's a completely different dynamic. There are a lot of couples there. It's more of an event, I guess, than like football, which is, I don't know, still in a different place. But behind me, the guy was telling whoever the woman was with him, he was explaining the rules to her as the game was going on. But just in front of me, I was down at the end where all the action was in the first half, James Lowe's try and all that, and Ireland got a line out about 6 metres out, and there were 2 ladies in front of me, and one of them was taking a photo of the line out. She was standing up for quite some time, and there was a more elderly gentleman behind her who I think was there with his daughter, and he was just like kind of prodded her on the back, like, would you get out of my way? I actually can't see Ireland taking a line out here because you're taking a photo. And I'd say it took her about 6 or 7 seconds to move. She just persisted, wouldn't move, barely looked him in the face, took the photo, and then sat down and probably put it on Instagram. She may or may not have known what happened in the line out, but there is an element of that. I've
no problem with her taking the photograph and putting it on Instagram. I accept the standing up bit is.
But take photos. Like, I took a couple of photos, but with a break in play, don't be obstructing someone's view. That's
totally fair.
Who cares about your photo?
I had something of a similar experience at the All Ireland Club final, the now infamous All Ireland Club final, where there was a couple of friends in front of me. They were watching the game. They were getting very carried away. There might have been mams of people involved. They were certainly very passionate about it. And I was doing it. Anytime the ball went down either end, their default setting was to stand up, and nobody else around them was standing up. So them standing up, I either to choose, I'm not going to see the game.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to stand up, and then the people behind me are going to have to stand up. So often I thought, I'll just take the hit here. And that was very frustrating. So people do stand up for different reasons. I accept that this one, obviously, when they're taking, albeit the line-out is very photogenic.
It is, but take
opportunity.
Yeah, but don't block the fella behind
that
you.
That is fair. I was very tempted to. I was so close to going, would you just mind, like, could you just sit down because you're sort of ruining it for everybody else behind?
I'm frightful of the first time I'm on public transport and I'm offered a seat, right? So hopefully that's a long way down the line. But that is one of those moments where if you're trying to say to the fella or the woman in front of you, would you mind sitting down there? You're edging towards that sort of territory.
Well, it's very hard to that not to turn into a bit of a conflict.
Yeah, no, it is. And in fairness, like you'll see this like a lot at football matches as well, where people like, and it's creeping in England where terraces are coming back and people like to stand at games games. But Jerry Thornley's one of his overall points was the difference in the atmosphere created by the French and the Irish, and unquestionably the decibel levels and the noise levels. The moment I remember most in terms of the noise from that game was not an Irish try, it was not the try being awarded to James Lowe, it was not this or that. It was the French break for their first try, and the noise of the French fans beside me was unbelievable. I was like, this feels like a football game.
But it did also feel like, sorry, I'm not offering a total counterpoint to what you're saying here. I do accept there are certain elements of that. It also seemed like there was a lot of French people in the stadium. They seem to have done in Ireland on it. Like,
yeah, anecdotally, and Jerry Thornley again wrote about this. He's like, we'd laud the Irish if they managed this.
Oh, heroes!
Oh, fair play,
national heroes.
Like Giant
send them up to the Irish when they come back.
We showed the Italians like it was supposed to be a sea of. But there must have been, anecdotally, it felt like there were an awful lot of French people there, and it was far better for the atmosphere. Like as I mentioned, the 3 games I was at last year, I was like, this is shite. Like this is really must be like those Premier League games now where you get once a year day trippers who basically don't know how to create an atmosphere. This was better, but if Ireland and France isn't going to create an atmosphere, nothing will in Lansdowne. Like.
If you've just joined us, you're very welcome to OTB AM, brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. And he's only just walked into the studio. Colm, good morning to you.
Hey Adrian, hi Johnny.
Great to see
how are
you.
you? It was great listening to you. What an honour to be on. I think we're okay now.
I don't know if you've paid any attention to what's going on.
I have no. I was listening away, and
anything to offer?
Well, I do. It's more going back to Johnny and his experience at the match, because this is already becoming what are we 6 days later, a regret that I wasn't at it, because it sounded like an incredible day at the stadium for such a monumental match. But like, did the majority of the atmosphere for you come from the visiting French supporters?
Oh yeah, and it wasn't, in terms of atmosphere, this was not incredible at all. Like, I go to League of Ireland games that have more atmosphere than 50,000 at a rugby game, 100%. Like, I was at Turner's Cross last year, 6,000 people at it. The noise was unbelievable. It's not necessarily the amount of people there. And Ireland against France in Lansdowne Road in March is going to be a different gravy to this, because it's football, and the football fan, the atmosphere at Irish games, the Aviva Stadium, football versus rugby, is absolute chalk and cheese. Like,
but a passionate rugby fan listening to you this morning who attends Ireland games at the Aviva will challenge that, won't they? That your typical football fan will be more...
passionate rugby fan will know I'm right on this, because he or she will be saying, like, well, I've been going to games for years and it's not the same. Look at Michael Kiernan's drop goal in 85 and compare it to anything now. It's completely incomparable. Listen to the noise, like, and if you go to the Ireland-France game, the place will be absolutely rocking. I don't know what that is. We can discuss reasons for that, but it'll be far better atmosphere, there's no doubt.
I this isn't totally explained, but I do think, like, the World Cup coming up, everybody's very conscious of the Six Nations. Always feels like it's the pinnacle of the year, right? Like, particularly playing France at home, that's probably that, in England at home, the pinnacle of the year, particularly obviously for home fans who can't get to the away games. This year it kind of feels like, there's something else kind of bigger coming. That does feed into it a little bit. Look, I'm not for a second using that as this is the reason why it's a little bit quieter. And the ticket, somebody just point out here, the contact us on YouTube. Richard Redballs, good morning to you, regular viewer. The hardcore rugby fans have been priced out of rugby matches. The prices of tickets is astonishing, and that is fair. Also,
I've heard that time and time again. That I know a very, very, like, dyed-in-the-wool rugby fan who's like, I'm not paying 135 quid to go to games.
A couple of people, and then
whether or not he can afford it, I think he can afford it. He's just like objecting on the sense that I'm not paying that for a game. But the reason for me, if you put, like, say 40,000 regular football attending people, like, so 40,000 League of Ireland fans or 40,000 people who go to games regularly, put them in the Aviva Stadium for an Ireland game, they know what to do. At an Irish rugby game, I'd say if you canvass how many, like, club rugby games you go to a year, or how many even Munster or Leinster games you go to a year, a lot of them are just day trippers. Like, I've
been to plenty of Ireland football matches, by the way, and you'd fall asleep at them. There's definitely now the singing section actually helps. And just as you were chatting there, sort of it has.
For some whatever reason, it has actually.
If there was some sort of a hardcore section that you could have at the Aviva, a la the singing section of the football, that might actually sort of inspire everybody else, because you're dependent on some lad. Like, let's face it, whenever the field starts up, some lad or lassie who's had 10 points in them, and them and there are a couple of people around them have started the sing song.
Absolutely.
And everybody else joins in. Yeah. And I'm not suggesting, in case anybody, the RFU is listening, don't get the PA to sort of lead the charge here. Let's not do that. But if you had some sort of an orchestrator, like the England soccer, the lads that go around with the bugles and they start.
Well, you see in the games like being at games in Italy where there's a guy, like, who literally doesn't watch any of the game. He just faces the crowd and he orchestrates everything. And it's like, I mean, I was at a pre-season friendly in Istanbul, Galatasaray and Fiorentina. holy crap, like that was a friendly. I was like, and if you're queuing to get on the tube, like you're literally taking your life into your hands because the tube is totally overcrowded. You could be pushed onto the track at any time, and you're like, this is a friendly. And then you go to an Irish rugby
What
game.
a shit
and you're
gig
like,
that is, by the way.
What's that?
Not watching the game.
Yeah. Like the volunteers.
You have to pay full price to come in and take away from the game.
Would they not be
Volunteers
paying you
all
for
around
that?
the League of Ireland, which we'll talk about. The volunteers all around the League of Ireland who sell the hot dogs.
I have a feeling it's a topic we might come back to.
15 minutes in, it's all over the papers. Look at this from the Examiner this morning.
We're coming to it.
And nothing from Adrian yet. 15 minutes in, the
We're
League of
coming
Ireland has begun, and just because that loan
It hasn't begun yet.
Case, you
It
haven't
hasn't
even
begun.
mentioned
I
it
always
yet.
think it's a bit sad when a stadium has a designated singing section. It's like that's where you can have your fun.
But is
and
it
the rest
not
of
either?
you-
No, I
It's
don't
so
think it's.
sad.
I don't think it's that where you can have your fun. I think it works. I think the Irish football internationals are a brilliant case of how it works, because it inspires the rest of the stadium to.
No, I think the rest of the
involved.
stadium observes from
Huh?
a distance. I think they observe the fun section from a distance.
Ah,
And some
Hashtag
will be like,
fun
well,
section.
I'd be happy to be here. Some people will think about it. Other people, I wish I was over there. But it does feel like it's a separate fun area to the rest of the stadium.
Edward Freeman says most Irish football games are normally as quiet as a library. The only decent singing atmosphere comes from the League of Ireland section, and Tommy, who I guess is Tommy two times.
That we do that.
The Aviva has no build-up to games. Look at the Stade de France, Cardiff, European clubs in football. Atmosphere and build-up with lights, music, flames helps make the fans get excited. The Aviva is a bore. I'm not sure about that because there is loads of stuff goes on. In fact, I was sat behind for one of the November games. It might have been the New Zealand match, behind one of the the Havelock Square end that dips down, and so I was right behind the goal there. And they had the flames go up, and then when you're sat around the stadium, you hear this like bit of a bang or whatever. I was sat from like here to maybe twice as far away from you from the bang, and Jesus Christ, it nearly resulted in a happening.
Happened
It was
Saturday as well. It was like, Jesus.
it was like whoa, what's happening there?
But the kind of imposed music throughout the game I wouldn't be a fan of either, but each their own, I suppose.
Yeah, I'm not mad about that when it's blaring in. But wasn't there talk at the tail end of the inter-county season last year that there was a lack of entertainment put on at Croke Park before, during and after games? And that we should be providing more to our audience, especially with the price of tickets now escalating. That it should be a whole day out. Like, I was at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium back in August to watch the Wolves game, and it's like a festival there. It's like the football is a bonus. You go in, and the quality of food and drink is phenomenal. You have food from all around the world.
What stadium is
That's
that?
cool.
The Tottenham Hotspur Stadium.
Oh, right, okay.
And then one side of the stadium, the whole way down, is a bar. So it's the longest bar in Europe, as
Isn't
they
that
very proudly say.
Tottenham's biggest issue that the football is a
maybe.
sideshow.
But also there was live music. There was a live band.
Right.
So then you're like, oh yeah, there's a match on as well. And then you go in and it's an absolutely incredible stadium that's both compact and somehow vast. So it feels like an incredible experience. And the way that it's designed, whoever the architect was brilliant, because no matter where you are, it's atmospheric.
You can completely see that on TV.
No matter where you are, it's atmospheric. And then afterwards, they encourage you to stay. So they want you to hang out in the stadium afterwards. So you can
That's
stay there
unique.
for 2 or 3 hours. So that's exactly what happened that day. It was a lunchtime kickoff.
That's a great idea.
And then afterwards, it was like 4 or 5 of us, and the bar stayed open, and they were encouraging people to stay.
Cool.
And then you talk about the match with strangers.
There's a lot of comments coming in about that one, and we'll come back to it in
It's a fire pit topic.
Fire pit later
the
on.
best atmosphere you were ever in a stadium would be a good conversation.
I feel like, Daddy, can we finally get the sweets now? I mean, it's nearly 20
The more,
minutes.
the more,
Ireland is returning
as I'd
here.
say to my
Adrian,
own
come
kids,
on.
the more you keep asking for them,
Yeah.
the less chance
Talk
you
about
have
the
of
League of
getting
Ireland. That's it.
No, we will. Do keep the comments coming in on the other stuff.
Tommy two times has gotten a mention. There's no mention of Cork City.
It did remind me that it was a year since yourself and Duffer had your little introduction.
Duffer, what a man. Second album for Duffer now this season. It very, very tricky for Shells to improve on last season, if you ask me. League of Ireland is, I've never felt it to be in a better place in terms of quality on the pitch, and anecdotally the crowds are up so much. The LOI season pass is back. I know they're very keen for people to get on board that. It's great value for all the games. You can essentially watch any game at any time. I'm going to Inchicore tonight. I can't wait, and I know the decibel levels at Inchicore, there'll be nothing lacking there. Derry City in town. I can't wait. It's great to be back. Yeah,
there is a good buzz about it. Like, obviously a lot of names in at the various clubs. Athlone being one, I think maybe one of the only ones where there isn't one single player that have come in. But there's a lot of different names that have come in from different leagues. As you say, obviously attendances are expected to be up. I think they're saying that's something during the week they were talking about. Maybe it might pass the 1 million mark.
Yeah, Future Ticketing were saying that the season tickets are up about 15 or 20% on last year, and that's coming from a pretty good base. We knock ourselves in this country about League of Ireland crowds, but we think of it in the sense of England, where it's not uncommon that you'll have 15,000 at a League 2 game, you know, if it's Bradford or something like that. Most countries are not like England, and League of Ireland crowds are actually not that bad. Like Dundalk is a town of, say, 35,000 people. Dundalk regularly get 3,000 or 4,000 at their games. Sligo is a town of, like, 20,000 people. Sligo regularly get 3,000 at their games. It's not actually bad.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
And they're proper football towns, like, and I'm delighted it's back. I think we're very hard on ourselves at times in this country in terms of League of Ireland, but I'm very proud of it, and I think the standards are increasing all the time, despite the fact there's no prize money.
What do you mean we're hard on ourselves?
Well, we'd be very. What do you think of the league, like, you know? And if it's, you know, the way the Irish Times does this, like, outsider to the parish piece, where someone comes over from, like, I don't know, Syria, and she says Ireland is amazing, people are very friendly, which you may or may not believe. In the League of Ireland, I think we're like, geez, if anything good is said about it, we feel great, and we're very we feel that I think we're insecure about the league. We feel that most people in the country don't follow it, and we feel that, you know, certainly as a kid, when I started going to Galway United matches, I was widely mocked, partly because I went to League of Ireland matches, partly for other reasons. But I think you're trying to defend the league all the time. I'm beyond that stage now. I love the league. I love going to games. I think the atmosphere is good. I think the quality is good, and I don't need people to tell me otherwise
And
anymore.
at the same time, you're proud to be a League of Ireland fan. Are you frustrated that it's not followed more in this country? Or do you understand it?
No, but sure, it's not a representative league. Like, there's large parts of the country, like Thurles, Monaghan, Cavan, Laois, Mayo, like loads of the country does not have a League of Ireland team. There's a large part of South Leinster into Munster that has no League of Ireland representation. So it's hard. But like Kerry FC are, hopefully, they are an outlier. But Kerry FC is an example of what might happen in proper Gaelic football heartland, opening up a new chapter tonight, and I wish them the best, but we need more of that, and that's one of the problems. The league isn't representative. If you're from Ballyhaunis, or if you're from Claremorris, or if you're from Portlaoise, or if you're from Clones, or if you're from, you know, all these other parts of the country, who do you support?
Well, there's clubs within shooting distance of all of those towns that you named. I mean, obviously, you know, a lot of League of Ireland clubs, but like the idea of, it's not, as you say, it's not under-supported, like it's 1 million people across the
really
course of the season. There's nothing to be. There's no argument to say that it's not supported, or certainly that thing of like the old chip on the shoulder about why don't people go to League of Ireland games? Like 1 million people across the season is
and we are hard on us. And
it's very good.
The other thing as well, I mean, social media, you can certainly moan about social media. I think it's been unbelievable for the League of Ireland. Like, RTE showing games now, or RTE not showing games, I think is almost irrelevant. I really do. Social media has been free publicity, and the clubs have, through the ingenuity of volunteers and through, you know, knowing what works, have come up with amazing stuff. And the buzz post-COVID is actually getting more and more. It's incredible. Like, Turner's Cross tonight to be sold out for the Visit of Bows. The Cork City returns to league. Colin Healy, like, what is that, 7,000 at the game. Yeah. It's not even a story hardly anymore. So it's and I do think social media has been huge, and I think the clubs have done massive work, considering there's almost no prize money, and you know they've had to do it all almost by themselves.
Yeah, that'll be some game tonight. Turner's Cross, Cork City Bulls.
Yeah,
that'll be great atmosphere.
Biggest attendance of the evening, I think.
Yeah.
With the lack of money on offer, is there a ceiling for the League of Ireland that it will inevitably hit, no matter how popular it gets? Because the geographical imbalance that you illustrated is really interesting, and you could compare that to hurling. You know, some parts of the country, it's just not that well supported.
But also
that's the greatest scandal in Irish sport. Like.
But then in other parts of the country, like hurling is by far the biggest sport in that area. Yeah. And for League of Ireland, for certain fans, it's League of Ireland or nothing.
I didn't mention Kilkenny there. Kilkenny used to have Kilkenny have a lovely ground, Buckley Park. Kilkenny doesn't have a football team anymore, partly because of that hurling. You know, they've been a joke with Gaelic football in Kilkenny. In my view, they've done nothing to promote it, but obviously the interest isn't there. And hurling has major issues with that. Hurling is one of the greatest Irish sporting scandals is how few counties play hurling. I think it's probably the greatest field sport
in the world. There's a motion up at Liam Griffin's motion up at Congress. It's either coming up today or tomorrow, to have every club, to insist that every club has to field a team at underage level from 7s to 10s or whatever it is. So that will, in 10-15 years' time, start to address that. Isn't the other elephant in the room, though, the point in terms of like the ultimate sustainability of the league, or perception of the league almost in some ways, that like the best players are just going to leave.
Yeah, the only thing is, like, the Brexit was one of the most stupid things, I think we can agree now, how it ever happened, but nobody thought about, Rishi Sunak's in, I think, Northern Ireland today, trying to sell Brexit to the deal to the DUP, yada yada, but nobody thought about the consequences of 18-year-olds not being able to go anymore. And this has been an absolute boon for Irish football, and it has really compelled us. For me, it was a national scandal that we had to, like, export all our kids. And watching the Chippy Brady documentary the other night, that it's normal for a 13-year-old to go over to London because he couldn't play football in this country, and people thinking, oh sure, that's grand. And even Chippy was saying, well, I was very, very homesick initially. Chippy was one of the most gifted footballers we ever had. What about the other thousands and thousands who had to come back and had depression because they didn't make it in England? They came back as failures, and now finally we've put it upon ourselves that we need to bring these players through in this country. We need to get our facilities in order, and I think the government really does need to help us in that as well, with the money it's taken from betting and so forth. Could that not go into academies in this country? But the league's in a much, much better place, I think. And the one thing I will say, Adrian, like, when I started going to games as a kid, I was about 15, the games were shite generally. They were hard to watch. They're actually not anymore. I almost always enjoy, unless Galway United are playing, I always enjoy watching League of Ireland games. Now, Pats and Derry tonight, I know there's going to be a lot of quality on show. And get to a game if you're thinking, like, you make a good point, Colin, about the Spurs experience. I think League of Ireland, Terryland now has a bar end as well. It does add to the occasion if you can go in and enjoy yourself, and the facilities are better because there's still a lot of improvement needed there as well. Rovers,
Derry, Pats, Dundalk. Is that the order?
I think, like, sometimes you make, and I'm bluffing now on some of these, like, some of the players, Pats and particularly Dundalk have gone, and a lot of the clubs have had to go outside the Irish, like, circle, and they're bringing in players on loan from England and Scotland. That's become a thing that I don't know much about.
From all around Europe, Norway, Denmark, Sweden,
and it's like Ireland is so the whole Brexit situation, I think we do look upon it at times, and there's a bit of a schadenfreude, and we're thinking, like, oh, what were you doing over there? But, like, in Ireland now, we are the English-speaking nation in the EU, and it's an attractive place for a lot of players in the EU to play, I think, as possibly a means to progress elsewhere. But generally, that bit of insecurity I spoke about, the players who come over to the League of Ireland from anywhere else generally speak very highly of the standard. I definitely think that's true.
I don't think it's a problem that we export like the best players.
Not at all.
Like the Dutch league would be a great example of that. There's still quality there to enjoy, and, like, you're still producing this brilliant talent that you're setting, so it's actually beneficial to everyone. I don't think that's a problem. You're never going to be able to keep them here. Remember back in the 70s, you had George Best and Bobby Tamlin coming over.
Well, it's just
what was happening there.
The point
like,
is that, like, just an excitement builds up around, like an Evan Ferguson type. I mean, look, that's maybe a unicorn example to a big degree, but, like,
he's a good example though, because if he moves on from Brighton, by all accounts, Bows are going to make
but you know what I mean. Like, in terms of, like, an excitement builds up around a player that
he's going to go.
Ultimately, they're good enough, and that excitement continues. They are going to leave. That is the sort of elephant in the room.
Most football clubs are like that though, because most football clubs will have to sell their best players because somebody better will come in. So there's an element of that. Like, I don't mind that. I don't mind, and I think our relationship with British football is kind of becoming a bit mutually beneficial, where a lot of players are coming over from Britain to get experience here. And if you can have the trickle down economics of the Evan Ferguson situation, which I think is good, if we do develop players here, St. Kevin's and Bows will benefit from Evan Ferguson, hopefully leaving Brighton for Real Madrid for 600 million or something like that, and that money trickles down to the League of Ireland. And I got to give Bows a mention as well. What they've done with the Palestinian connection yesterday in terms of that away jersey, I think is just beautiful. And I know Bows get a lot of slagging for their woke stuff off the pitch, so I think they're an absolute example to everyone what they do.
Just want to pick out two comments here in this conversation. Shane there on YouTube, more of an atmosphere at League of Ireland game than 500 or 5,000 to 10,000 people that have packed Aviva at the rugby. And that's exactly what you were saying, Johnny, that you would have better atmospheres at League of Ireland games.
Yeah.
Another one, Dara Morrissey too, and this actually reminded me of my own experience. Big League of Ireland fan here. Best atmosphere I experience is regularly in Germany. Hamburg has amazing beer and food well under €10. Always helps. Back to St. Pauli in March. I went to an 1860 Munich game on a Stag. What an atmosphere.
Yeah.
It was absolutely incredible. I'd say the stadium was at best half full. Didn't matter. The atmosphere was incredible.
I went to on my own Stag, Hertha Berlin against Bayern in the Olympic Stadium.
Yeah.
And I look at obviously two
on your own,
massive clubs. Was I on my own?
Yeah.
At the Stag do? On my own Stag do. I wasn't on my own, but it was my own Stag do. It was November. I think it was November, and it was bloody cold.
Berlin's a great city.
December. Unbelievable atmosphere, like absolute cracker.
A friend of mine went to the Berlin Derby recently, just a couple of weeks ago, and it's absolutely phenomenal.
When Dundalk were playing Karabag in Baku, like they moved it to a ground where I think there were like 6,000 at it. Unbelievable atmosphere. Like you don't need 50,000 people to make noise. Like.
Are you done now? Will we leave the League of Ireland there? Like
Alan
Quinlan's on later on, exactly.
Alan Quinlan's a football man, but he's a good example. He's a Tipperary man. Thurles Town don't exist anymore. He doesn't have a team support.
You mentioned before the show about segueing the League of Ireland stuff. Have we done it now? Are you happy enough that we've done it? Do you feel we need to go back to the League of Ireland?
I'll go back time and time again, and I'll
there's another question I have that we haven't got to. No, but I think we can save it.
Throw it out there.
But I just think does the League of Ireland need to create an identity in terms of how they play football in order for it to create a niche in the market, because otherwise it's just another small league in Europe. Is there something that the League of Ireland can do to help itself stand out to other leagues, and therefore people living here but like, actually this is a great league that I should be watching as a priority, not just every so often?
When was the last League of Ireland game you went to?
I went to the season before last. Rovers were down at Turner's Cross.
Okay.
Yeah. So you're talking, but then again, that circumstance, I just don't go back to Cork as much as I used to, and I haven't gone up to a game here. Tempted to go to a Bulls game up here, but no, do you know what? And yeah, I'm a good example of it. Yeah,
if you go to a game, you'll find that the vast majority of teams play on the ground now. It's totally different to what
I'd watch it when it's on TV, and I watch it, as you say, on social, no problem at all.
You can go to see Jack Byrne, you can go to see Graham Burke, you can go to see Patrick McElhenney, you can go to see Will Patching, you can go to see Chris Forrester. I regularly do, and I never feel like I want to. Also, it's not the Premier League. It's not. We'll talk with Man United today and potential Qatari owners, potential Saudi owners. It's not that, and I think we can celebrate for that as well.
He's saying, "Shut up, come go to a game."
No. It's not that. It's
no. That's what Johnny's saying to you. That's he's saying.
No, I don't think
he's
so.
saying they don't need anything else.
No.
They have everything they need. You go to a game.
I think in terms of identity, in terms of the standard, we don't need the young coaches coming through. I think they're nearly all committed to playing football, and a lot of them are deep thinkers about the game. And I get slagged about this, but we have some really interesting young managers, Damien Duff among them, who are all trying to outdo each other and are all trying to get ideas from different parts of the world. And long way we have the League of Ireland is all I'll say. There you go, Adrian.
That's our League of Ireland slot for today, Johnny. Good stuff.
For this year, if you were on the show.
8 o'clock, OTB AM, brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. What are you saying?
That's a fair comment.
Absolutely not. But we've done 20 minutes on it now, and that's enough. That's for any slot. Here's what's coming up between now and 10 this morning.
I know why there's no one at your
Daniel Harris is standing by. That would be really sad. To talk all things Manchester United, particularly after last night, and the ownership coming up as well. Alan Quinlan is going to pick his, if every Irish player was fit, team halfway-ish in the Six Nations. If every Irish player was fit, who would the 23 be? And I think that'd be an interesting chat, including for the bench. Sports news called Milani at about 20 to 10 this morning. Jess Kelly is going to join us in the studio, and she's got a brand new bit of kit from PlayStation to talk about. It's assisted reality, but not as you know it. Jess coming your way at 10 to 9 this morning. We'll have our Friday Firepit, which has become a staple now. I mean, I think it's 3 weeks old. It's not a staple. Absolutely fine. And Declan Bogue from the show last night at 9:30.
One very quick thing. Speaking of stags, a friend who shall remain nameless, Kevin, he's trying to organise a stag, and I had one stag to organise, and we ended up going to Goran and then to Kilkenny afterwards, and that was like
Goran Park,
Goran Park in like November, Kilkenny afterwards, standard enough. But the reason we did that was because my original plan wasn't available at that time for whatever reason, and you as a local man, this is what I'm trying to sell to Kevin, because I haven't done it. I love to do it. The Shannon Cruise as a stag.
Oh yeah,
gotta be done.
In inherent danger there, of course, in any cruise on a stag.
Yeah,
like you're on a boat.
Yeah, John Duggan fell into the canal in Amsterdam. That was the 21st. Stag involved there.
JD's gotten a lot of mentions already this morning.
Has he?
Yeah.
I missed the first one, I'd say.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, yes or no, anyway?
What?
Yes or no?
You invite me on the. What is the Shannon Cruise? It's the thing at Carrick and Shannon where you go out in a boat at like midnight.
So you're from Athlone. It's like literally on the Shannon. So it's like you get on the boat and you stop off in various.
It's just a cruise, which is a stag.
But and apparently they give you the boat. They're like, right, off you go.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't be going near that in a stag do.
Well, there you go.
That's absolute like.
There you go. That's why you were on your own and your.
I'd say Daniel Harris loves a good stag.
Good man, Colin. Just
segue.
Got 8 o'clock. The Europa League playoff first leg, of course, last night for the place in the last 16 on the line. Manchester United 2, Barcelona 2. Daniel Harris, good morning to you.
Hi, good morning.
Sorry for delaying you there with chat about stag do's on cruising stag
Best stag do you've been at, Daniel?
Oh my gosh, my best stag. I've been on some good ones. I've had 2 myself. I love them so much. I had to get divorced.
When is the third?
So that I could have a second stag. I cried on my second stag twice.
Wow.
With overstimulation, I think. What happened? It was in Blackpool, which is a phenomenally unusual place, and they had this ride. It was one of those where it kind of takes you very high on this thing, and it drops you down or up. I think it drops you down. So you have that sensation of swallowing parts of your body, and it'd been a rather hectic evening before, shall we say. And I didn't want to do this ride, but obviously I knew it had to be done, so we did it. And then I remember saying to the mate that I happened to be sitting next to, am I crying? And he said, yeah, you are. I said, oh, that's interesting. And then later on that day, there was this, I had a shot of something, like there was a tray of shots. There was one shot that looked unusual. I don't know why, but I decided to drink that one. And it was a shot of Insanity Sauce, it's called, which is just the hottest product known to mankind. Now, I eat a lot of hot food. I guess it's that. Part of it is the fact that my wife is British Ghanaian. They eat a lot of hot food. Part of it is my particular preoccupation with trying to turn everything into some kind of buzz, even eating. So I am used to hot food, so it wasn't that it was hot. But drinking a shot of this Insanity Sauce was a whole body experience. I don't really know what to say. It's
Dan, the key
hard.
is in the name there, you know?
Yeah, I guess it is. That just a little bit of it will blow your head off, and I drank an entire shot of it. And that also had me crying, not with distress, just overstimulation again, I think, where something about it was just this cold, enveloping, full body, full brain experience. And again, I found myself saying, oh, I'm crying again. So yeah, that was one of my stags.
We go. We've had a lot of booze references for a Friday at like 8 a.m, but there we go.
Too many, some would say, including our producer. Right, we'll segue into other roller coaster rides, Daniel. How about that? Is that a fair enough segue?
I'm having that.
So, from United fans' point of view, obviously been burned so much over the last 10 years. I suppose you're sort of guarding against false dawns, but another big performance at a big team last night, and you really feel as if this team, I mean, I don't know if they've landed, but they're certainly maturing at a rate of knots. Yeah,
they're getting there, aren't they? I think that what was really enjoyable about this performance, it wasn't that they're that good, because they're not that good yet, and Barcelona aren't that good yet. But I would say that this is the first time since 1998, November 1998, where United have gone away to Barcelona or Madrid and properly taken it to them. In 2008, United were the best team in the world. And they played Barca in the semi-final of the Champions League, and they went to Nou Camp in the first leg, and they sat back. And they didn't have to do that. Barcelona weren't that good then. They were good, but they weren't that good. United were good enough to go to Barcelona, engage them in a proper game of football like this one, and beat them. But they didn't. They missed a penalty very early on, and they spent the rest of the game sitting back. Wayne Rooney was basically played as an auxiliary right back, and talking about drinking early on a Friday morning. I would say that's probably the most drunk I've ever been at a football match.
Is Wayne Rooney really right back?
I would. It's true though. I promise you that is true. I was about to say, even then I knew the way United were playing wasn't right that night. But Fergie, after they got done by Real Madrid on the counter in 2000. He became much more circumspect in Europe. And I think it sort of naturally happens when managers get older, because it happened to Wenger as well. They're starting to think about legacy, and that persuades them to be a little bit more conservative sometimes. It definitely happened to Fergie, that he was desperate to win another Champions League. So he had a brilliant defence at that point. So he started to be a little bit more conservative. Although to his credit, he wasn't in the final. They properly went for it in the final. And I guess we're lucky not to lose the final in the end. But they should have finished the final in the first half of that game, because they played really well. But anyway, it didn't work out like that. But they went to Barcelona this time, and they took it to them. And I think results are always important. It's a we're often told this a results business, but I think at this point in this team's development, I said that on here last week. I thought I was quite pleased United drew Barcelona, because I thought having to go away to the Nou Camp and play a knockout tie against them was a really good staging post in the development in this team. And so I think that although results are always the key thing, going there, playing like this and drawing is worth more in the long term than going there, sitting back and scrounging a win like they did that time under Ole in Paris. And the thing that we now know about Ten Hag is that it doesn't matter who the opposition are. In every single game that United play under him, they will try and take it to the opposition. They'll try and put it on them and they'll try and win. And it hasn't been like that since the turn of the century.
We were on a team out last night, team night out last night, Daniel, and we were.
So that's why we're talking about this.
Exactly. The game was on, sort of not quite in the background.
Actually, it's nothing to do with that. Actually,
why was I NFI?
Huh?
I was NFI.
So
Go again?
what was that?
I was NFI. It's an abbreviation of words that I can't use.
Sorry, okay. Somebody has just given the translation
not.
here, Daniel.
The N stands for not and the I stands for invited.
This is another Brexit issue here. We need a translator.
NFI, not.
Couldn't get the paper.
Invited.
We'll have you over the next one. Right. So, come here. We were sitting there and we were chatting away, and there was a conversation happened just to my left, and I wasn't fully tuned into it, but I did at some point hear one of our colleagues saying, because United are still in contention for the title, and I turned around, my instinct was, what are you talking about? No chance. But I mean, you sprinkle in a bit of Martinez and a bit of Eriksen into that team last night. They are, I mean, I don't know if they're title contenders still, maybe to do with the quality of those above them, but they are getting there if you sprinkle in some of the players that are out at the minute.
They're not far off the teams that are above them, and this is going to sound like if my auntie had etc. He'd be my uncle, but if they'd have won the first two games, they'd be banging the title race. Their form since those first two games is up there with the teams that are in the title race, and it took Ten Hag 2 games to have a look, and since that point, United, they beat Liverpool in the third game, and since that game, they've been improving, and the level they're at now is not that far off the teams that are above them. It may be that they're not as good as City yet. We'll see, I guess, what happens over the next 3 months. And City's performance against United, even though United weren't that good yet, didn't have Casemiro, but City's performance against United in the 6-3 is by far the best performance has been in the Premier League this season, I would say. And I don't know if United are quite capable of playing that well yet, but you can see very much that they're getting there. The defence is good, although they conceded 2 goals last night. One was from a corner. Doesn't mean that it doesn't count, but their defence and the second goal was one that you look at it and you think, was there actually a way of stopping that? And there probably wasn't. So they defended some good players pretty well last night, and as you saw, they made a lot of chances. And so you talk about putting Martinez and Eriksen in there. I think that actually what the ideal thing that happens this summer is they sign a midfielder who has some similar qualities to Eriksen, but is faster and stronger, and they sign a striker, then you're talking about what should be a very serious football team. And the speed with which Ten Hag has made this happen makes him look very good indeed. I mean, he's got the team believing in him, and he's got results that on the pitch that show very quickly that if you listen to him, things will work well. And there's clearly a great atmosphere about the club, a great atmosphere about the team, good competition for places, and players that are still improving.
What the Rashford goal I thought was fascinating because there are a lot of aspects to this, and you could blame the keeper, but for me, I think 9 times out of 10 the keeper's expecting Rashford to go the other side. I'm just looking at what are we here? The Daily Telegraph. Fred got 9. Where is Fred at the moment? Where is Fred at the moment as a Man United player?
Not 9. I mean, it was strange from Fred actually because I tweeted that during the first half that he was having a Leeds home, not Leeds away, because he was good last week at Leeds away, and he was absolutely shocking Leeds at home. But then he gave away the goal quite near the beginning of the first half. It wasn't just his, wasn't the only error, but it was an egregious error he made, standing there flapping his arms while Araujo scored. But he was excellent after that. And the thing about Fred, someone said on Twitter that made me laugh, is he's a disruptor. You know that he'll disrupt the midfield, but you're not sure if it will be your midfield or the other team's midfield. And I think I think, and I responded, and I said, the thing about Fred is that if he is playing his best and the worst player in the team, then you can have a player like him and still be really good. The problem is when he's not the worst player in the team and he's not playing at his best level, then he can be a very significant problem for your team. But he has some good attributes. He's just the most careless footballer I've ever seen in possession. And he's capable of doing some very good stuff.
Look at his pass for the goal. Look at his pass for the goal.
Yeah, 100%. He can do some really good stuff, and he's got Brazilian flair and Brazilian touch sometimes, and other times he has my flair, and he's able to get wrong some very straightforward things. But his pass for the Rashford's goal was excellent. And you asked about the finish. I think you do have to blame the keeper because the only place that Rashford could score was where he did score, and it was a brilliant finish. The way that he was able to thread the ball through that space, but also the way that he jammed his foot behind the ball to kind of make it fizz. But if the goalkeeper is another half a foot over, because he thinks he's covering that space and he isn't. And it's not that he showed Rashford that space thinking he couldn't hit it. He thought that he was making sure that space was unavailable. And if he's half a foot over, that space isn't available and it hits his foot and he saves it. But it was still a brilliant finish.
I think
I mean, it's at that point with Marcus Rashford where it's almost like at the beginning of his career where the things, not that he's as good, like he's much better now, just the way things started to happen for him, scoring twice on your debut, scoring twice on your second game in your league debut, scoring on your England debut, and you're kind of scoring an amazing winner in your first derby, and you're kind of standing there at the game thinking, is this guy for real? Like, how is all this stuff happening to this guy like this? Because life isn't like this.
I think,
and he's sort of that player again now, where he's just scoring in every single game. Great goals, strikers' goals, tap-ins, headers, runs, drives. And you're just kind of thinking, is this guy for real? How? And the question, like, the run won't go on like this. It can't go on like this forever. But the challenge now is, this is your top level. You need to make it your base level. You need to be playing like this all the time. And then if he does, he'll be one of the best players around and go on to have an unbelievable career. He needs to make sure this isn't a streak. And the way that the team's developing around him, because that's something massive that's changed. I forget about anything Rashford's done. He's playing with better players than he's ever played with, who are playing better than they've ever played with in all the time he's been at United. And that gives him a really good base to go on to be the player that I think that a lot of us always knew he should be, because
will that
all
career
the raw materials were there.
Will that career be at Man United?
I mean, it looks that way. He's had opportunities to leave before when things were going badly, and he didn't. And I think that there was times when you felt quite guilty as a United supporter watching Rashford, because you knew that I always compared him in my mind to Raheem Sterling, because there were just two boys who I guess I really loved as blokes, who were playing in the same city, playing in similar positions, and I always felt that Rashford had the better natural talent, but Raheem Sterling was smashing his career because he was playing under a better manager and playing in a better team. And now Rashford's playing in a good team under what appears to be a brilliant manager, and we're seeing that all that talent that he has is just right there for him.
My one concern, Dan, for Rashford would be we've seen that he's prone to I guess what you would call a dramatic lack of confidence last season, and the schedule of games is so tough. And you're saying he has to produce this all the time. The schedule of games is so tough. If he does go through a blip in form, which is entirely logical given how many games they're playing, that'll be my small concern, because this guy is he's totally unrecognisable from last year. It's unbelievable, the transformation. He was amazing last night.
Yeah, but I guess it's not that different from the player we saw before last season.
Yeah.
So last season feels like a very specific circumstance, and that United were in an absolutely awful state that it seems unlikely they can get into again under Ten Hag. And I think the thing with Rashford personally is there appears to have been stuff going on that we don't know about. He hasn't talked about it in any detail, and it's none of our business, so I'm not going to speculate as to what might have been going on. But it feels like what did go on with him had stuff to do with stuff that had nothing to do with football. And it's fair to say that perhaps that could happen to him again. But in a football sense, footballistically, as Arsene Wenger would say, it feels like the circumstances around what happened to him previously are unlikely to recur. And when I say he has to play like this all the time, I don't mean he has to score in every game. But what I mean is that his bottom level needs to come up and his modal level needs to come up. Those are the two things that define the greatest players. Not what your best level is, because every player has a best level that they hit sometimes and they look unplayable. It's how well you play all the time. What is the level you hit most often, and what is your bottom level? And the best players I've ever seen are the players who had the highest bottom level. Roy Keane, Brian Robson were 7 or 8 out of 10 in pretty much every game. You never even really saw them hit a 6. And that's why they're the best players. It's not because they occasionally hit a 10. It's that. And Rashford needs to raise that bottom level. So what I mean is that he won't always play like he played last night, but because he has such rich raw materials that he's got, if he stays fit, the only player I've seen able to keep up with Rashford when he's running with the ball is Reece James, who is another amazing player, incidentally. So he's got that pace. So if he's got the confidence, and the confidence will go up, just the natural confidence, because he knows now how good he can be. And he knows now that he can score goals on a regular like this. So the confidence that he'll now have to elevate and sustain and perpetuate this kind of form is significant. And the thing with Rashford now is that you say there are a lot of games, and there are, and it is a concern for United that they could play extra time on Thursday and then they'll have to play a final on Sunday. That could also go to extra time. It's only really Rashford and Bruno Fernandes that have played loads. I mean, Casemiro's had 4 games off with suspension. The defenders have all had time off. So it's only really those two. And the thing with Rashford at the moment is playing so well, you want to keep playing him. Ten Hag will have to manage his game time at some point, probably. Not so that he doesn't get injured, probably, but just so that when the bigger games come at the end of the season, if United is still involved in any of them, because I guess the League Cup's over next week, whatever happens, this competition could be over next week as well, that he's still able to keep hitting this level at the end of the season. He's not exhausted. I think that there are other goals in the team, although he's sort of taken responsibility for scoring them. There are quite a few other players in the team that can score, and you would think that next season there will be another forward coming in. I think the question now for Ten Hag is he going to go and try and find the best centre forward that he can, whatever money it costs, or is he going to decide that actually Rashford can be that centre forward and that money might get spent somewhere else, because United have got Jadon Sancho and Alejandro Garnacho who can play on the left wing. They've got Anthony who can play on the right wing. And they've also got Pellistri, who looks a player, and Diallo, who's had a brilliant loan at Sunderland. One of those two can understudy Anthony. And then actually maybe you use Rashford through the middle, and the striker that you then need doesn't have to go and become 100, like Victor Osimhen for 140 million quid. And you can spend that money on other areas of the team. But that's the question now for me with Rashford. What's going to be his position? And I'm amazed that I'm even talking about the fact that he could be a centre forward, but it does look now like maybe he could be a full-time centre forward.
Yeah, at Arsenal, possibly. We will see how contract talks. He has been linked to it.
I think he'll be all right.
I think he'll be okay. Yeah. Talk to us a little bit about Casemiro, and we've got about a minute here, but Paul Scholes on BT last night said that he was the best player he's seen in that position since Roy Keane, which I had to pause, rewind, play it again. Quite a dollop of praise.
Yeah, I mean, I bet he'd be good on a Stag. But there's what I love about Casemiro, aside, is he's brought proper personality and security to this team, because the players know that he knows what he's doing. And it's the same with when you've then got Varane behind him. Those two in particular, they bring authority and personality to the team, because the other players know that they know what is required to win and to be good. So when they look around and they see those two there, it gives them a sense of well-being. And as a midfield player, he's got everything. I mean, it's a weird thing, because we've all been watching Casemiro for so long, watching him be brilliant, but I still feel like I'm learning about how brilliant he is. And it's not that I thought he was just a bloke who sits and kicks people when necessary. Fernandinho, basically. And I don't say that as any kind of disrespect. Fernandinho is a brilliant player. Someone who knows exactly when to foul, is really good at fouling, who just makes sure that the team has a structure and can go about its attacking business. I knew he could attack a bit as well, but it's the drive. I think that he's the drive. He drives the team. He drives the team forward, And he is the single player, although I think still Bruno Fernandes is the soul of the team, the single player that they could least afford to lose is Casemiro, because they don't have any kind of replacement for him. We've seen the difference when he's not there. And there are other players beside Bruno Fernandes who can make goals happen, but there's no one probably in the world who can do what Casemiro does. And I don't think he's as good a passer as Roy Keane was, and he's not now as quick as Roy Keane was either. But he gives the team that level of personality and security where the other players look around, they see him there, they watch what he does, and they know that everything's going to be all right.
Yeah, that's a good note to leave it on. Daniel, thanks a million. It's been emotional.
Cheers,
thanks a million.
Have a good weekend, everyone.
You too. Cheers. Daniel Harris on the line there, talking all things United. Interesting times there. We didn't get to talk about Jadon Sancho, who feels like Rashford sort of 12 months ago, and whether that will come right, but we'll have plenty of time to do that.
And Saudi's joining the race to buy them as well.
Yeah, the ownership race, of course, as well. That heats up the deadline. Soft deadline, it's been described as 10 p.m. tonight, by which the Saudi Arabia Investment Fund, who own Newcastle, Qatar, who own PSG, the Ratcliffe, who owns Ineos, and Elon Musk. I don't know how serious
probably
that
sack
is.
Rashford in the Monday morning. Judging by his Twitter behaviour. Yeah.
So we'll see. It's soft deadline, 10 o'clock tonight. That generally means you need a bit more time to see whether you're going to invest your $5 billion or not. We can extend it out a little bit. So see how that pans out. 8:25, loads to come. We've Jess Kelly going to drop in a little bit to talk to us about assisted reality and the latest offering from PlayStation on that front. A lighter set, it seems, is probably one of the main selling points around that. We'll have our Friday Firepit as well, where we've a few things in the mixer to get through, and Carl, I think, will be in the studio in a little bit as well to bring us up to speed with all the very latest in the world of live sport. And you are watching, of course, OTB AM, brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. We have loads of comments coming in as well, so we're going to come to those and Quinny after these.
OTB AM,
The Sports Breakfast Show from Off the Ball.
Have you subscribed to the OTB Football Podcast?
Probably for a little over a year. It's been my intention and my desire to play for Ireland.
Subscribe now to the OTB Football Podcast stream wherever you get your podcasts, and download the OTB Sports app.
OTB Sports Rugby.
You want to just take it easy, keep the emotion in check?
That's not what the sport is about. It's about emotion. It's about singing your national anthem with pride.
Subscribe to the rugby stream on the OTB Sports app now.
OTB AM with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
27 minutes past 8, you're watching OTB AM. It's myself and Johnny with you until 10 o'clock. A lot of people wondering about if there's a crappy quiz or not. I believe there is. Are you hosting or no? No, you won't be hosting because you're not on PM duty. But it looks like you've been offended by the fact that there's a crappy quiz happening now and you're not involved.
Yeah, I found my niche in terms of like kind of somewhat amusing ineptitude, but I don't know actually. I'm on the AM shift today, and I'm probably gonna go back to bed, to be honest, after this. Yeah.
You should be contestant on it someday.
I have been. I'm utterly awful. Like, so bad. I completely froze. I'm really bad.
That's my role, Johnny. I don't need anybody else taking that role.
General knowledge. If it's general knowledge and I can look at my phone for the answer, I'm not bad actually. Yeah.
General knowledge and I can Google it.
Yeah. I'm interested in Alan Quinlan Stag though now. Like,
28 minutes past 8. Quinny, good morning to you.
Morning, lads. How are you?
Good. A lot to get to here. We've Tadhg news, obviously, as well, that we'll touch on. But one thing we did want to do a bit of a stock take, I think. We're a couple of halfway-ish is how I'm describing this. And we've obviously been talking a little bit about the depth that we've managed to build over the last while. But we've tasked you with selecting a 23. In Ireland 23, let's say it's a World Cup match tomorrow. Everybody is fit. I think the bench might be as much of a talking point as anywhere here. But that's the task. You jump in wherever you want.
Yeah, you're always getting me into trouble with tasking me with these kind of things with players individually. Look, obviously they've done incredibly well so far, and the first 2 wins have been outstanding. If you were picking an Irish team in the morning, it probably close enough to picks itself. Hugo Keenan fullback, Mac Hansen, Gary Ringrose. If Robbie Henshaw's available, he goes in at 12. James Lowe, Johnny Sexton, Jamison Gibson Park.
So stop, press pause there now. And like even in terms of the midfield, Quinny, right? Like, I mean, McCluskey's obviously put his hand up in a big way over the last couple of games.
And this is a side, if it was a World Cup match tomorrow. That's what you're picking. Everyone's fit and available, right? Okay, just to clarify that.
Final there for a minute, I think. But anyway, yeah.
No, we won't mention that situation, Johnny. It'll come back to bite us. Yeah, the midfield. Obviously, you have Bundy Aki and Stuart McCluskey. Stuart McCluskey's done very well. He's transitioned in there seamlessly, and he's been superb. And it's great to see, because I think, you know, he's not a young player anymore, and he's kind of been on the fringes for a couple of years, but he's proved that he can play at this level and perform very well at this level, and he's got very good strengths there. But, you know, if there's a fit Robbie Henshaw, and if you're picking a Lions team in the morning, you know, he's in the conversation every time.
Is there a bit of pressure on him, Quinny, now, though? Is that the slight difference here, that he's obviously known as been a big leader in that team? As you say, when he's fit, he's always in. Seems like he's back in training. Probably won't be risked for the Italy game, but may come in after that. But suddenly, is he watching everything going on over the last few weeks, thinking, Jesus, my place is not guaranteed here in a way that it maybe once was?
Yeah, I think, of course, he'll be thinking that way. But he'll be confident enough to know that, you know, if he hits his targets regards fitness and conditioning, that you know, he'll get opportunities there. He's just a brilliant player. I think he's so fit, really important part of the way Ireland are playing as well. So you're splitting hairs with some of these selections, and that's the good thing that's happened now, Adrian, that, you know, we're in a World Cup year, 6 months out from a World Cup, and there's a lot of strength and depth in certain positions, and I think that's the thing Andy Farrell has been pleased about, where some players have stepped up. But, you know, Bundy Aki could go step in there as a 12 as well, you know. I think if Gary Ringrose is injured, that probably he's a significant loss, in the sense that there's the way he's been playing and the balance and the defensive work he can do, and his attacking ability in those wider channels would be, there's no like for like for Gary Ringrose at the moment.
You mentioned Keenan. I think we spoke about this on Monday as well. With Ger, if he were injured, like, what would happen? But where does he stand at the moment in terms of Irish fullbacks that have played for Ireland?
It's very early, and, you know, you don't compare people, Johnny, until they're a couple of years in or coming towards the end of their career, maybe. But on the basis of what we've seen, I think Hugo Keenan has started 28 or 29 of 32 tests or something like that. Maybe 30 tests in the last 32 tests Ireland have played. He's started most of them. So he's been wonderful. He's such a brilliant, balanced player. I think his temperament is really good. So what we're seeing and what we're hearing other people say, and I quoted Will Greenwood 2 weeks ago saying that this guy is world class. He'd be on a world team of the year if he, you know, you've got to listen to someone like that who's played in the back line and who's achieved a lot in the game. In Will Greenwood, won World Cups, and that's the way people look at Hugo Keenan now. Not just Irish people. You can be blinkered sometimes, but people are saying he's world class. So if you're getting those kind of accolades and credit at the moment, he has to be right up there. His all round game is superb. It's just wonderful. There's no weakness there that you can kind of get jumps out at you. So yeah, I think he could be one of the best we ever had at fullback.
You know, you're so reluctant to sort of go there because you're comparing areas or whatever. But I mean, I think obviously just given what's gone before, we're headed that way. Did you go for Lowe and Hansen on the wings?
Yeah, I think James Lowe has been incredible since he had those defensive issues 2 years ago, and I love the fact, and he's a great example for any young player who starts out in Test rugby or even European rugby or playing with one of the provinces, and you make a couple of mistakes and you get criticised publicly. He's a great example of how you can respond. You can go away. Same in GA, in soccer, in any sport. It's difficult sometimes. You know, you have to learn the pace and the tempo of international, of that high level. And he went away, worked on his game, and he's been outstanding for Ireland. You know, his defensive work, and I think the intercept try over in Wales shows that his positioning has improved a huge amount. He was always never going to shirk a tackle, but it was just his positioning at times. So yeah, James Lowe has been wonderful, and that left boot is brilliant as well. Mac Hansen on the right wing, and I think his footballing ability and his attacking sense has added so much to this Irish backline as well. He's been brilliant.
You sort of forget injury and various other bits and pieces. Keith Earls and Andrew Conway.
Yeah, Andrew Conway has been out for so long. It's so unfortunate. And obviously Keith Earls has been such a brilliant player for Ireland for such a long time. And, unfortunately for those guys, it's these other players, these other wingers are after coming through, and they're after taking over that mantle. And it's hard to shift them now because, as I said, their all-round game is just so good. Jordan Larmour's come back in the mix, which is brilliant to see, and I'd love to see him getting an opportunity maybe against Italy. I don't know if it'll happen. Jimmy O'Brien has been absolutely brilliant, and
Stockdale sort of squeezing his way back into the mix. Like, in terms of making a World Cup squad, Quinny, even, I mean, like those names we've mentioned, and he's obviously a bit of a leaning towards a bit of experience when you look at O'Mahony and Murray, and those, they're not gambles, but selections have certainly paid off for him. But in terms of World Cup squad, even the likes of Earls and Conway under a bit of pressure, it seems.
Yeah, it's going to be very difficult for him. You think Keith Earls was due to go back to and play with Munster this week. I think he picked up a small injury. He misses the game against Ospreys tonight, so that's unfortunate. You want to remind the selectors when you come back from Irish camp, something I had to do a fair bit myself. When you're training with the squad and you're released back to your province, you've got to go out and play and show and give him a reminder, and he can't do that tonight. Andrew Conway's been so unfortunate with the injuries. He got to that level of comfortable at international level and making a real impact, and unfortunately he's had a dreadful time with his knee, so it's going to be difficult for them, really difficult. And the likes of Jimmy O'Brien and Jordan Larmour have been playing so well, and you imagine they'll be involved in big games towards the end of the season as well.
Yeah, Conway, one of the most underrated players, I think, over the last 7-8 years from an Irish context. Take us up front, Quinny. Again, jump in wherever you want.
There's no great surprises here. You can split hairs with some of them. Andrew Porter, Dan Sheehan, Tadhg Furlong. If you look at the hooker position, Dan Sheehan or Ronan Kelleher, we're blessed that we have players of that calibre. You think Rory Best was there for so long, over 100 caps for Ireland. He was a captain, and Rob Herring obviously has been very, very good as well. But I think Sheehan and Kelleher have just unbelievable finds for Ireland and for Leinster. They're so young as well. You imagine they're going to be there for a long time.
What's the Herring shortcoming versus the other two?
He's not physically as big, and that's probably the other two are just freakishly strong and big and powerful. And I think they're ball carriers. They can make more impact with the ball as well. Rob Herring, Rob Herring started against France last week, and there was no one. The only concern would be that a little bit of size maybe, and the scrum was a worry with Tadhg Furlong out, which he had Finlay Bealham and Rob Herring there, and you think you're nervous about that. It worked out brilliantly, and both of those guys, obviously Rob Herring went off, and we didn't get to see a lot of him, but he's come off the bench in New Zealand the last summer and was outstanding as well. So the depth there is pretty good. Sheehan probably starts because Ronan Kelleher obviously was the starting hooker a year and a half or a year ago. He picked up a couple of injuries. He was brought on that Lions tour with Warren Gatland as well as cover, but highly thought of. Two brilliant players, and of course Tadhg Furlong at tight head. There's no real. You could flip a coin between Sheehan and Kelleher, and we're very lucky there.
James Tracy was with us yesterday, the just retired Leinster front row course, and he flipped the coin slightly the other way, and I think that's the point. And as you say, we're
you could start Ronan Kelleher and bring Dan Sheehan off the bench and say that Dan Sheehan is there's I don't know if there's any hooker in the world like Dan Sheehan who can run like a winger. He's so quick. He scores a lot of tries out in the wider channel, particularly for Leinster. He's tap and goes. He's scoring tries for. It's incredible. He's freakishly athletic and so good with the ball in hand and so quick. So
is this the best we've been serving that area? Like in terms of the depth that you're talking about as well.
Yeah, well, when I played, Johnny, Rory Best and Jerry Flannery were there, and Frankie Sheehan. I just think back at the 2007 World Cup, and I think that those three hookers were exceptionally good. And you know, any of the three of them going in there, Rory Best and Jerry Flannery had kind of jumped ahead of Frankie, but I think it is at the moment. I just don't. I think for any team in the world to have two players of the caliber of Sheehan and Kelleher, it's exceptional. I think for a couple of years England have had Jamie George and Cowan Dickey, and you want players coming off the bench that you go, wow, get him on and he's going to do something different. And it's not normally you talk about hookers doing that, but with these guys you do, because you know they can have a massive effect in the game, and they're so comfortable and strong and physical at this level.
We've always, like, even going back to years, Kieran Fitzgerald, Woody, we need to mention Woody, of course. We've been decently well served. Talk to us.
Be footballers as well, like, you know.
Yeah,
you know,
they can play a bit like.
You look at the try, even the Keenan try as well, and I'm going to ask at the end, like, you know, just in terms of we'll get to that, but like, where are the flaws in this actual squad as well? Like,
press pause on that for a second while you take us into the second row, Quinny.
Yeah, James Ryan, Ty Byrne. I think you ideally, and Johnny kind of just hinted at us, there's flaws, and we'll talk about them in a minute, just depth in some areas. This is an area that Ty Byrne is obviously out for 12 weeks now, so the natural inclination here we better pick the team first. Just James Ryan, Ty Byrne, and that's who started, and they've been so good in the last 12 months in that position. Both of them. James Ryan is just back to having big moments throughout, constant moments throughout the out games, and his work rate is through the roof. He looks strong and physical again. He's had a few injuries himself, and you just think back to the way he started his international career in 2018. He had some crazy stat that he hadn't lost a game between Leinster and Ireland for up on 20-25 matches or something. It was crazy. His first loss was away in Australia, I think, in the first tests for Ireland. But that whole season, winning a Grand Slam, and a real leader as well, James Ryan.
That second half, that tackle, I can't remember who was on. I think it was from it was actually an Ireland kickoff or whatever. It was like the ball was hit down the field, and this massive Irish press, and he like barreled into a lad about 5 metres off the line, and you're like, it was, I guess, Quinny as well, for like the amount of HIAs he's had and the amount of like setbacks he's had. It's just great to see him have a run of games.
Yeah, it is. And look, the way the HIA system has gone, Johnny, I think they're being picked up so often. I think some people ask me, is there more of them now in the game? There's not. They're just all being picked up now, and players are being stood down, which is a good thing. So James Ryan has certainly had a few. But yeah, that just sums up his conditioning and the fitness. And it's a hallmark of this team that they're really fit and well conditioned. I think we're going to get... I'm nervous about doing this piece, because it just means Ireland are brilliant, that we're saying that. On the evidence of what we've seen, and anybody else who's seen it outside of Ireland, they deserve to get credit, and we're probably trying to pick holes in depth and why they've been so good. One of the big factors is they're unbelievably fit, and James Ryan looks to have a real spring in his step again, and he's been really consistent in his performances. So, you're starting James Ryan and Ty Byrne. The front row, as I said, probably picks itself. The back row, Caelan Doris, Josh van der Fleer, and Peter O'Mahony are the ones that, on paper now, you would start him. I think some could argue and say, well, would you put Ty Byrne in the back row? Would you bring in Ian Henderson the second row? Would you bring in other players like Ryan Baird or Joe McCarthy or something like that? And I don't think you need to. I think Peter O'Mahony's work rate, he doesn't have the same amount of carries as Caelan Doris or Josh van der Fleer, but that's not his game. I think sometimes you hear this unseen work. It's very much seen to me, and people who are watching it closely. There was a couple of breakdowns last week that Peter O'Mahony is second man there, and really affecting those breakdowns, and they're big things in the game as well. So he's not this natural carrier who's going to have 20 carries a game. Sometimes he's played, and we've thought, he needs to get his hands on the ball a little bit more. But his big strength is obviously his line-out work, his breakdown work, and the advantage of having a real leader and a bit of dog. Really, he's confrontational. You think of people love the fact that he stood toe to toe with Sam Cane last year, and at times against New Zealand he was really kind of aggressive and in their faces and kind of creating a kind of an attitude that we're not going to take a backward step here. We're not going to be intimidated. So he's very important from that point of view. Jack Conan obviously has had an incredible high, being line starter 2 years ago, and he's impacted off the bench a couple of times so far. But I think that's probably the 15 players that you're starting.
What's I felt the bench might be create the biggest talking point. So who have you got?
Again, it's difficult, and things may change come the World Cup. So if Dan Sheehan is starting, Ronan Kelleher is on the bench. Cian Healy, again, we've got to see him when he comes back from injury. I think Dave Kilcoyne has done really well and looks in really good shape since he's come back from a neck injury, which is obviously not the best injury to have as a prop, where you lose a lot of strength and power as well. And he's had a really good impact since he's come back. So it's difficult there. It's probably Cian Healy and experience, but he's got to come back and show that he's conditioned. He's Finlay Bealham at tight end, who's done brilliantly. He deserves massive credit. Ian Henderson, Jack Conan. If you're picking it now, I think you're going with Henderson, Jack Conan as your second row, back row option. This is where it gets tricky, and obviously you have other options there like Ryan Baird and Joe McCarthy that could easily sit in the bench if they finish strong with Leinster. I just keep thinking that Ryan Baird is someone who's getting closer and closer and closer to being either on the bench or possibly even a starter for Ireland.
Wow.
He could start for against Italy. I just think the way he's played with Leinster this year, his athleticism is just freakish. Again, he's another one of these guys who just has an incredible engine and so skillful and quick for a second row stroke back row. So he could easily come into the mix. Gavin Coombs obviously needs a strong finish for the season. These are just possibilities. Picking them now, it's Henderson, Conan. If Andy Farrell is picking a scrum half at the moment, who do you think he's picking?
Well, this is the nub of the issue. I mean, go on. I'm not giving you my answer. Go on.
Well, with if Gibson Park is starting, I think I think the way it's gone now, it's Conor Murray. Because he's done unbelievably well to get back and show what he can do.
How has that happened, Quinny? Like, how is this transformation happened with him?
I don't know, Johnny. Sometimes it's a mental thing. You know yourself in sport. We all have dips and we all have time where certain other things you get a bit weary. He's been around for so long, and you get a kind of a recharge, if you like, or a setback. And I think obviously not being in the 23 for Munster versus Northampton post Christmas, I was really interested to hear, and it didn't surprise me that he was an incredibly positive influence around the Munster camp that week. Didn't drop the head, didn't sulk, and it's a sign of someone who's has a really good attitude. And even I'm not sure everybody would be like that. You get dropped and it's easy to kind of sulk or be really upset and disappointed. I think that's what kept coming out of the Munster camp. He was incredibly positive all week, which is brilliant to hear. You hope that that's the situation. So I don't know. I think he's obviously had an incredibly tough week last week with his dad. But I think it's just belief and confidence in yourself, and sometimes chatting to a sports psychologist and actually really remembering, realising what you're still good at and what got you there in the first place. I think Conor Murray's game has been stifled by the way Munster were playing in the last few years. Just constantly kicking, not constantly, kicking a lot. The attack the structure. Like, I remember when Conor Murray, and I know he was a young player, I played for 2 seasons with him. He was there training with us. He was the most creative, energetic runner that you could see in a game of touch, and even in warm-up. This guy was just bouncing around the field, making line breaks. So Conor Murray can run with the ball, he can break. But I just think when you don't do something for so long and you're not used to doing that, I think his game has suffered a little bit, and the game has moved on to just attack and getting the ball away and moving. So I think he was being stifled. But so it's a mental thing. Long answer, but I think mentally maybe, and he's keeping himself in good condition. So Craig Casey has obviously been superb, and I thought last week coming off the bench, the zip and the pace to his passing was really impressive. So
that's 21, Quinny. I think you've 22 shirts, 22 and 23 to fill.
Yeah, well, Ross Byrne has grabbed the out half berth now on the bench, and coming off the bench, it doesn't need much explanation there.
23.
I'm going Bundyaki because of the serious impact he can bring, and plus you can shuffle around your back line as well. Gary Ringrose can go to the wing. Robbie Henshaw obviously can go out to 13. You could bring Bundyaki on. You could argue that a Jimmy O'Brien or a Jordan Larmour or if Stuart McCluskey is on the bench, it's kind of like for like. So
well, you nearly need a specialised midfield for the reason that you're saying there, don't you? It can't nearly.
Yeah, you do. You can make it work a little bit easier with the winger. You can not easily, but you can push centres out onto the wing, and I think Gary Ringrose could be really comfortable there if one of the wingers got injured. But you could bring a Jimmy O'Brien in, and he can play centre as well. Yeah. And he did that against Australia. So no great surprises in any of that. I think the bench can filter on, and I think we may see some changes at the bench for definite come the World Cup.
There will be, and there'll be injuries and there'll be all sorts going on, but appreciate you putting your neck on the line there on that one, Quinny. Just one before we let you away. Malachi Fekitoa, the news from Munster during the week that he's leaving, and the speculation then started straight away, well, this is clearing the way now, Bundyaki is going to make the trip south. But in the meantime, they've announced the Murray All Blacks and chief centre Alex Nankervis, so that looks to be Bundyaki staying put, potentially.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't. Obviously, those rumours had started, and Malachi Fekitoa hasn't worked. They've made a decision. Both sides maybe have made a decision. I don't know. He hasn't played a lot. It's a pity because we saw the quality that he possesses in recent times, which is good to see. He starts tonight again, but yeah, they've gone for and signed Alex Nankervis, who's a very good player. He's played with the Chiefs for a number of years. He's a couple of Maori caps, as you said. He was on that tour and that New Zealand selected played Ireland in November and came off the bench. He's a big fella. He's around 100 kilos and 6'2". So there's a fair bit of skill and kind of evasion in his game. So they've obviously done their homework, but you never know with overseas players. You know, he could be a real gem and he might not hit the heights that they want, and not necessarily. Sometimes when you look, you think when you're signing players from New Zealand and he's a marquee player now, has he got to have played for the All Blacks? But you just think of Rua Tipoki, the impact he had, Maffey in Munster, and they hadn't got played for the All Blacks. So hopefully this guy can make an impact. I've watched him and looked at him a couple of times and he looks a real player.
Right, well, we're way over, but well worth it. We'll come back to Johnny's question another day about the flaws. Quinny, fair play, thanks a million.
Cheers, thanks lads.
Come on, Alan Quinlan on all things rugby there. Really interesting stuff about where this whole thing stacks up. Inevitably there'll be a million injuries, there'll be all bits the
depth is, I was asking another day, are the players like happier playing under Andy Farrell? Is there more of a sort of a freedom than there was under Schmidt? They just seem a very happy camp now. I think the backroom team as well, it's I
think we're very quick to That is absolutely seems to be the case. That everybody you speak to on or off the record, it does seem to be a happier camp. There's not the
maybe fear or
certainly tenseness anyway that I think existed around performance levels. Look at it. We were delighted when he was here. We were delighted to have him. He was delivering sort of grand slams. It was like obviously he did amazing things at Leinster, and you wouldn't want to be papering over all that stuff and pretending that that level of success didn't happen. I do think it does seem to be it's by all accounts very happy camp,
and they're fun
but
to
they've
watch.
got the balance of been a happy camp, fun to watch, getting results for now,
and number one in the world.
Let's see what happens. Let's see what happens over the next few months without getting crazy carried away with ourselves. 5 to 9. Jess Kelly, good morning. Yeah, we going straight to you. How are you getting on?
A little bit of music.
Kind of sing there and all.
Yeah.
How are you getting on?
I'm alright, how are you?
Flying it, yeah.
Yeah.
What are we doing? You've got some
One
stuff
time.
here, right?
This is our first time on air and he's already buzzed it up.
I've read the brief. Assisted reality.
Yeah.
PlayStation have brought out a brand new thing. It's lighter than the other thing.
Professional broadcaster. You're no Joe Malloy, I'll tell you that. Here, pop this on.
All right, we're
beautiful
going for a
assistant.
night, are we?
Well, it's not gonna play a game because I don't want you to puke on air because I'm not that mean.
I appreciate the sentiment of that. Just stick this on, yeah.
Just stick it on, yeah. So this is the new PlayStation VR 2. This is the new headset that we spoke about with Ger and Shane a few weeks ago. It's been hotly anticipated. The first iteration of it came out a number of years ago, back in 2016. And
that's definitely not going to fit me. Is there a way to
yeah, you turn the dial on the back.
That's what I would have thought, but then you push it in and then do you?
There we go.
This is going so well.
It's like one of the kids' bicycle helmets. There we go.
This were a sponsored segment. It's never happened. Yeah. Look, it's perfect.
Perfect.
Oh, there we go.
What a pro.
Wow. It's just dark.
So it's the new version, and not only have they changed the design, but they've also changed the tech inside. So as you'll see, you look like Wally the robot. The idea is...
I can't see anything.
Yeah. The idea is that it's a lighter headset, so it's not going to be as cumbersome on your neck, but also you'll notice, Adrian, you only have one big cable coming out of the headset, and before on the previous version you had multiple cables, and so it just felt like you were being tied to your PS4 as it was back then. Now with the PS5 it's just one cable that plugs in to the system, then you've got your in-ears that dangle down from the headset. And the beauty of this is the tech that is built into it. So you now have 2 OLED panels, one for each eye. So the quality of the content that you're seeing is incredible. There's motion sensor technology built in. What I really like about this is that there are 4 sort of patches on the frame of the device that allows you to see your surroundings. So when you're putting that headset on, say if you're in your living room, for example, it is important to have a bit of spatial awareness because the games are so good that you kind of get lost in it a little bit.
Yeah.
You kind of forget, okay, well, the coffee table's here and the couch is here, because you could be spun around and all of a sudden lose your bearings entirely.
There's some great stuff on TikTok and all of that if you want to go on that.
Well, I was thinking next week I might bring the whole kit and caboodle in and we might
do that.
see how many of your bones we can break.
100% up for that.
Okay, cool. These are the motion...
Sorry, when you say there's panels in terms of allowing the spatial awareness, what do you mean?
So on the side, so when you put the headset on, the first thing you see are lenses that are essentially like glasses, and that allows you to see the content. But then almost on the the edges of the frames of my glasses, for example, there will be little patches that appear black and white. So I could see, say, my laptop and I could see this box in black and white to be aware that there are things around me.
That's very useful.
Now, saying that, I was playing, there's a great game called Kayak VR Mirage. I was kayaking around the world in Leopardstown, and didn't I break a glass? Because you get so lost in it and you lose track of yourself a little bit.
You definitely want to be sober doing this. I know we've had a lot of booze references in the show, but you definitely want to be sober. There's a lot going on here.
You would want to, yeah. And the other thing is, so these are the controllers that you have in your hands, and they've changed the design of it. It's so much better. It's very ergonomic, so it just feels natural. You can press all your buttons, and it gives you similar dexterity in a game to what you would have in real life. I still found, though, after playing for around 40 minutes, it made me a bit nauseous. In the previous iteration, it was around 15 minutes or so, and then you wanted to get sick. I got around to, like, 40 minutes or so was a long time in a game anyway, but I don't know necessarily that it is for the long-term wearer.
Is there nearly like a workout aspect to it as well. 100%.
You like, and this isn't. And the reason I want to do the demo with the full set with you next week is because you do look like a fool, and it's very difficult.
You don't need any help in that regard.
No, you don't. I said that to the lads outside a second ago, but you do look bananas because you are, when you're playing games, if you've got a bow and arrow, you're moving your hands as if you've got a bow and arrow, or if you're boxing, you're moving as if you're boxing someone, and it's very immersive. It's definitely a workout. And the other thing that this headset has is, the haptic feedback that you might get on your phone when your phone buzzes or anything like that.
Oh, yeah.
They have that in the headset. So there's one of the games where you're walking through a forest, and if a branch moves, it feels like you kind of jump back because you feel like you're going to get whacked in the face. I could not get over the reality, and that's the point, it's the virtual reality, but the quality of the games have gone up a notch, and there's also more experiences because the first time it came out, I was saying to Jer and Shane, I played a Batman game or a Spider-Man game, and you were in these sort of cartoony worlds, particularly the kayak game. It sounds and it feels and it looks so real. And there's really clever technology built into not only the games but the headset as well, so that no matter where I look, what I look at is in focus, but all this other stuff is in the peripheral vision. And the sounds, you can hear stuff from a distance coming behind you, or you can hear stuff approaching from the left. It's by far the most immersive virtual experience I've ever encountered. And the good news is that there are hundreds of games in development for this, because that was part of the problem last time, was that there were a few big titles that you'd pay 80 quid for. And after that, then you were like, well, what am I spending the money on this headset for? But talking of money, it's expensive.
Let's cut to the chase here. What sort of bunts are we talking? This is the one thing I'm thinking. I'm going to I have a figure in my head that's going to be well wrong.
Go on, what are you thinking?
It's about 1,200.
No, it is $599.99.
That is dirt cheap.
It is incredibly affordable. Some of the other VR headsets that are out there, like Meta unveiled their latest one last year, and it's €1,700. So that's big money. This is an accessory for your PlayStation 5, and it's important to note that it only works with the PlayStation 5.
That's what I was going to ask. So this on its own is no good to you?
That on its own is no good to you.
So how much is the PlayStation 5?
It's another 600 quid.
So I was right, 1,200.
1,200.
So, yeah, sorry, I was kind of, I'm only getting,
And that's before you buy a game for it as well.
Okay.
So, and these titles will be pretty expensive. If you have some of the titles that are going to have updates for VR mode, some of them will do the VR update for free. Others, there may be an extra charge to get that VR experience. So it's going to be like an expensive enough endeavour.
I have two questions.
Go.
Presumably at some point you won't need the physical PlayStation. This will be enough.
Potentially. So this is what some have already tried to do, like the Netflix of gaming, where you can just open a game on your telly and then you're good to go. The issue is that the processing power for particularly the games that are so vivid, you do need to have essentially like a computer type processor.
They're trying to make these as light as they can, so actually they'll be slightly...
It's a seesaw.
Give us an old handle of it there.
And the other one is the space thing is a real issue. I played about 3 years ago possibly, I played would have been one of the first iterations of it, and I played the boxing thing.
Yes.
And I was at home, and you can imagine what happened.
Yeah.
I punched the wall and it was incredibly sore. I'm pretty sure I did a bit of damage to my hand.
Yeah.
And that is a lot of people's experience. So what is the solution to the space thing?
Yeah, it is. It's a tough one. They do say, and there are plenty of, I suppose, safety reminders when you are playing these types of games. You'd want to have at least a 2x2 space. The safest way I found is to be sitting in a chair. So we have like an office chair similar to what you're in. And so you can sit there, you can move around, but you're not taking up the entire living room or whatever it is. That is a point of contention. As I said, I broke a glass while virtually kayaking. So you do want to make sure that there's nothing in your direct sort of line of reach. But that's why the space that's on the headset is so important, to give you that field of vision, or that sort of awareness, sense of awareness as to what's around you. I can see these being incredibly popular, but I do think you need to take the safety side of things a little bit seriously.
Do we have any football games?
Not as of yet that I'm aware of. Now, there are plenty of fitness type games that involve you, like the kayaking one, but a lot of them are the big titles. So there's the Star Wars Tales from Galaxy's Edge, there's the VR Mirage, Moss and Moss, there's Resident Evil Village, there's a whole ton of titles, and what they're trying to do is get the big hitters that are enticing people to buy the PS5, for example, and then adding the VR element. But I'd say it won't be long before we have more of the sporting titles
Well, you
coming
need
down
the
the track.
paddles for your legs for the football.
Potentially, yeah.
And is there an age limit on who can use this?
Well, no, so I think the terms and conditions would probably say that adult supervision is very important.
Even for adults?
Even for adults. I'm not joking you. Between the potential fear of damaging yourself by punching the wall, but the
This
knowledge...
should actually be the inverse, Jess. Your kids should actually supervise this because they know better than you. It's like, Daddy, you're making a show of yourself here.
That's probably Adrian's kids probably say that.
Yeah, they do that.
But the key thing for me is the nausea and getting used to having things jumping out at you and sounds and all the rest, because it's very disconcerting. There's also a deadly thing on this that has eye tracking. So when you're setting up, I don't know if either of you use iPhone, but when you're setting up Face ID on iPhone, you have to move your head in a circle. The eye tracking on this, you move your eyes and it can track where your eyes are looking.
That's nuts.
So, for example, when something pops up, if text pops up on the screen, rather than you having to move your hand and click the button, you just look down to the left and then you click the button, so it can track exactly where you're looking to ensure that you are seeing and are engaging with the right thing as if you were in real life. So I've had this for about a week. It's not out until next week. I have been obsessed, and I think it's although it's more affordable than you might think, it's still a big investment. The games are going to be expensive, but I know that there are gamers who already have it pre-ordered and will be dying to get their hands on it.
How many days of the week have you played it?
Well, you see, because of the puke factor, I probably haven't used it as much as some people might think I have. I've done it, I've every day since we've had it, I've gone on for a few minutes and played different games just to try and get a sense of it. But as I said, around 40 minutes, I'm
Puke threshold.
That is my puke threshold.
Next Friday, what game are you suggesting for me?
I kind of want to see you doing the kayak.
I'd do that, yeah.
And I probably want to get you in sort of a combat situation.
Combat situation, as in somebody kicking the crap out of me.
Yeah, or even one of those bow and arrow games, and just maybe have you wet yourself live on air when an arrow comes out of nowhere.
All possible.
Thinking about the League of Ireland.
Jess, that was it was a slot, and I enjoyed it. Have you any more information about the people should go? And it's out. You said it's out next week.
It's out next on the 22nd. If you want a proper review, if you want an in-depth, knowledgeable review with none of this malarkey, you can find Tech Talk on the News Talk app powered by Go Loud, or tune into News Talk tomorrow at 5 p.m, where there will be an in-depth review minus Adrian Barry, which is always a good scenario.
There's more adults in the room. Jess, pleasure as always. Thanks a million. Look forward to next week. It is 9:06. It's Friday morning's OTB AM. You're watching us, of course, every morning with thanks to Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. We have the Friday Firepit still to come. We're going to take a clip of Jack Conan. We're going to take a clip of Jack Conan. It seems like we're going to take a Jack Conan. He was no, we're not taking a clip. That's not happening.
What do we do?
Here's what's coming up on OTB Sports Radio. Is that's what we're doing? Yes, it is. OTB Gold, Life and Times of Johnny Caban from 1 o'clock today. There'll be a crappy quiz at some point today as well, I believe, and there'll probably be a football kickoff as well coming away before all of that. At 3 o'clock it'll be Mount Rushmore. Meath is the subject. So I mean, easy come, easy go there. Liam Coyle is the Team 33 League of Ireland legend at 4, and Emmanuel Petit.
What a baller.
At 6. I knew you were going to say something.
Like if he hadn't had an awful injury, he would have gone right to the top. I'm convinced of that. I mean, right to the top of football.
6 o'clock is OTB Gold.
Liam Coyle, yeah.
Somebody else, his name,
you probably
Petit.
lost your train of thought. Liam Coyle, and when I was early days of me following League of Ireland, there were a couple of players where a lot of the time the football was tough. The pitches were bad as winter football. It used to rain in Ireland back then. There were a couple of players that you could be just this bleak Friday night and he would do something amazing. Tony Sheridan was one. Liam Coyle was certainly another. What a footballer!
I'm all for the League of Ireland shooing it in wherever we can. You know that.
Did you ever go to St. Mel's?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Like this is the great sort of farce of people, including yourself, and I'm sure others, saying that I'm sort of anti-league. I was like in St. Mel's every week.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Oh, they were the days.
Oh, but they were amazing days. Yeah, the team was Larry Wise and Rod DeCours and
before my time even.
Shane Kern would have been there latterly.
Remember Shane? Yeah. What a character.
Mickey O'Connor. Roddy would have been manager back in the day, but it would have been pre all of that.
St. Mel's definitely had a beauty about it. It was an absolute dump. It was a dump, but
I
it
went
did
to school
have
next door, you see, so it was sort of handy. We'd been in and out a fair bit, and
right.
You'd be back down on a whatever it would have been Friday, Saturday night.
AC Milan are like, yes, but where is beach?
Yeah. Well, there's the famous stories about AC Milan. The pictures of them getting off the bus, but like it's like, oh look, here they are getting off the pitch into the muck, and like, oh, these poor Italians, and they're like that's what you had to. You literally had to wade in and out of muck, going in and out of the ground every week.
Give me St. Mel's over.
But I can still smell it and feel it. And it was a thing. It was an absolute thing. You could literally reach out and touch the players when they were taking a throw in. You could smell the deep heat or whatever it was back then.
With all due respect, Athlone Town is actually my local club where I'm from in East Galway. It's closer to me than Galway United, which is neither here nor there in some respects. But the progress that they've been making on the women's side of it, I do really, really hope that Athlone bounces back because the Midlands could do with it, and it has a lot of potential, I think. The progress they made last year on the women's side was quite amazing.
You can follow OTB across social and subscribe to the OTB Podcast Network. During the ads, you're going to hear a clip from the latest episode of the OTB Games Room. It's all in partnership with Virgin Media. Bring your A game with 99.9% broadband reliability. Here is the Irish Olympian David Gillick talking to Nathan and playing against Nathan, and he talks about what it feels like to interview athletes like Rashida Adeleke immediately after big performances. We're back after this with the Friday Firepit.
You're listening to OTB AM.
The Red 78.
It's going to be a bit of a lottery from the scrum point of view. They are incredibly strong.
Nobody knows Munster rugby better.
Look, the stats sometimes can be skewed. You can have lower possession than the opposition and still win the game.
I can't believe you've been positive for 3 weeks in a row. It must have been something that's so out of your mindset.
Available every Wednesday. Don't miss a moment of action. Subscribe to the rugby channel on the OTB Sports app and turn on your notifications now.
Yeah, you're putting the rest of us to shame with your post-race interviews on RTE.
Oh, you know what? Look, it's great and I love it. But I've probably grown into it a little bit. I think initially I still wanted to be out there, competing, and it probably takes a while till you kind of transition and go, yeah, do you know what? This is where I want to be at. But as you know, what a privilege to speak to people straight after some of their biggest performance in their lives. And I think Munich kind of summed that up last year with, it was such a step forward for Irish athletics in general.
Oh,
yes!
What?
Come on!
Ah, man, it's all your good work undone. That's a very cheap goal to give away. 2-0. So who are you most excited about 18 months away from Paris?
Oh, it's got to be Rashida.
Big chance gone.
Yeah, Rashida Adeleke. Even what she's already done kind of recently in the States, running so fast over 200 metres, fastest ever time, indoors or outdoors. And I think she's going to be extremely dominant over one lap, 400 metres.
OTB AM with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
What is it called? Friday Firepit? Friday Fridays.
So we just put a bit more thought into dominating
miserable
comments box this morning. You gotta call it like it is.
It's Friday, like come on. The Friday Firepit.
Firepit. I do need to go to this one comment here on YouTube from GR saying, I've still got an old Game Boy. Can that handle VR? Has it got the processing power? I don't think so.
What's the oldest computer game you remember, Adrian?
I had a ZX Spectrum 12AK.
What? Jeez, that's it. Yeah,
exactly.
I remember the Atari and Commodore 64.
Yeah, it would have been around the same. It might have been a couple of years just before that. But
Commodore 64, young man.
Commodore 64.
You had a little sort of tape recorder type device that you had to load up. It was
take about 5 minutes to load up.
Well, it seemed like a lot longer than that in those days, and then you'd just wait and do whatever you would do for 20 minutes and then play your Commodore 64. Simpler times.
Oftentimes you come back and it would have jammed at some point along the middle of it and you'd be like, reload, start again. Horace goes fishing and Horace goes skiing and Horace does all sorts of interesting things with the main games that we had. The
Great
ZX
times.
Spectrum, yeah. Outrun. It's one of the big games.
Outrun, yeah. I've played Outrun.
Look up ZX Spectrum. YouTube playing ZX Spectrum.
YouTube plays
in the afternoon at some point.
Okay.
So it's well worth it.
I remember Winfield National School where everyone was like, we're getting a Sega Mega Drive for Christmas this year. Wow. And that when I came home and I saw, I think it was Italian 90 was the game, it was absolutely terrible, but I'd never seen anything like it. When I saw that on my TV at home for the first time, I've never been happier. I think I peaked.
Sonic was the big thing.
Sonic,
for the Mega Drive, yeah.
Mega Drive, wasn't it? That was the big game changer.
a lot of people will be listening in saying, what the hell are they talking about? And others will be...
Well, no,
I
Sonic
kind of
is-
feel the same way. I'm sitting over here and I'm like,
Sonic
I'm so
is-
lost in this chat.
But Sonic is like now suddenly like got great currency.
Yeah.
For kids. It's like there's new Sonic movies coming out next month something.
There was one.
My young fella has Sonic pajamas, so I'm very familiar with the resurgence of Sonic.
Okay.
The one thing I would be worried about is if they did have the chance, you young kids, if they did have the chance when I was your age or younger to play against people literally around the world on your computer, I mean, I would never have been off it. Like, that would have been just the coolest thing ever. So thankfully, I kind of abandoned computer games as I got older. Because I'd just never be
the
off.
series producer, we call him that, make him Lofty Tots, is telling us the slot needs to begin. I mean, the slot is underway.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm happy.
But you're going to drive this thing around, Cameron, so...
Yeah, I'm going
take the
to...
wheel
Yeah,
there,
really clunky segue is coming this way. So, yeah, it is the Firepit, so we thought we'd take something from the week that was and discuss it in full here. So I think it's already put on the table today about the Ireland fans being kind of outsung by the French fans last weekend, and just it made me think of a good discussion on just Irish fan culture generally. I think Jerry was on Wednesday Night Rugby, Jerry Thornley, and himself and Joe and Andy Dunn really went into like there is an anthropological study on why there's no chanting at there's no singing culture in GAA, for instance, at GAA games.
The songs are crap.
They're terrible.
Mayo.
We used to have the field of Athenry now at Galway games.
Really?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Like Athenry is in Galway and it's a Galway song. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because I was thinking about it because I met a few French fans over the last weekend, and they were in.
You were using your like conversational French, obviously, to
a bit French actually.
No, yeah, I was able to speak
words in a French accent.
Well, I'm sold.
And they go, "Oh, you speak French in French?" And I go, "I certainly do."
You have an accent.
Hello, I am Cameron. Ah oui, c'est ça. But so I was talking to them, and even in defeat, they are brilliant crack. And I know Jerry Thornley mentions this. I was at a few top 14 games last year and was at the Champions Cup final in Marseille with the La Rochelle fans, and I was blown away by just how passionate they are and how they're so willing to incorporate you into their big sea of yellow.
Which you were obviously delighted to do.
Yes,
given who they were playing.
Given who they were playing, exactly. But I was just... It was so much more engaging than when I've gone to games at the RDS or the Aviva, or even sometimes, dare I say, at the sports ground. I find the communal aspect of going to those games leaves a little bit to be desired, and maybe that's just my weird definition of what a fan is. Maybe I literally think you're not a fan unless you sing.
So you mentioned the sports ground. Like, how many people have any history of going to rugby games in Galway, for example? Like, it wasn't a thing. Like, so the sports ground came along, and like a lot of rugby games are basically a piss up. Like they are. The RDS is Leinster always win by about 50.
But you say it wasn't a thing, but sure, you'd say the same about your own specialist topic at a certain point. Like
Galway Rovers have been in the league for the guts of 50 years.
Yeah, but like
not
how many people were going to?
Maybe a couple of thousand or 1,000 or whatever.
Exactly.
But like Connacht Rugby wasn't a thing. So it doesn't have a history of like people like who are the Connacht Ultras like.
Well, there was no rugby here was a thing, like professional rugby up to 25 years ago.
Yeah.
Sorry, the teams existed. They weren't what they are now. Like
I'd love to know what AIL fans make of it all. That they. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think that's the great anomaly in all this.
Let's pass it over because we're talking a lot here.
Well, if you go to AIL games, they're brilliant. Everyone gets behind their team. I went to Terranure Clontarf a few weeks ago, which is a real top of the table clash in Terranure, and it was brilliant. Real electricity. There's about 3,000 people around Lakelands, which is just, and like there's no stand in Lakelands. It's just the area around the pitch. And the atmosphere was cracking, and there was a real old school grassroots type vibe to it, where you're giving the hooker crap when he's trying to throw in and said, "Oh, don't make it crooked this time, mate. Come on, you're boring me," and that's brilliant.
Have you been to an AIL game?
Yeah, I've been to a couple, and I agree with Cameron. They are actually good crack, but I think part of it as well is that because like they are kind of a smaller crowd, you tend to stick with your own set of fans, and this is something that I was talking about earlier. Like, in the Women's Super League, there's no like away end, and I think it always takes away from the atmosphere because you get fans mixed in together, and rather than, you know, singing or chanting starting from one specific area, you just kind of have it like bitty here and there. And I think sometimes like Irish games kind of suffer from that as well with the rugby, because you don't really have like a set group that are going to start leading chants, or they're going to start, you know, making a bit of atmosphere, and then everyone joins in, and it's a bit of a domino effect to the whole thing.
Nice? Like if you go to going to GA, so there's a novelty in the uniqueness to it, and there's something sort of nice about that. And definitely going to GA games, you end up in all sorts of conversations with people around you because they're from different teams. Sometimes they get obviously spill over the line a little bit, but like you don't have the same threat of the reason that they initially brought in segregation of fans to begin with, as in, you know, they're going to kill each other. So what's your feeling? Is that the future for WSL, or?
I think so. I think it has improved the atmosphere massively. Like United were trialling it this season, and it just added that extra bit of like grit to the games. And I think because especially with something like the WSL, which is probably like developing an audience, and it's bringing people into football who maybe wouldn't necessarily always watch football or wouldn't know all the chants from watching the Premier League or whatever it is, there's a bit more of a community vibe to it. Like I do get we need to separate some sets of fans because they are going to kill each other, but that's more of a fan problem and a culture problem than let's try and build an atmosphere through it problem, I think.
Yeah, I just find it very odd that it's like, I was talking in the taxi on the way home last night with the taxi driver about this very topic, and I said it's actually really bizarre when I think about it that when you really boil it down, Green and Red and Mayo is made to be sung at these types of games. You'll never hear it chanted.
It's a bit of too much of a ballad.
I don't know. You could
can't
definitely
imagine swaying people in the stands.
I could definitely see that. And the irony is,
they're not like the Welsh rugby fans.
But like it's gas that if you go to a house party in Mayo, that's one of the first things that'll be on the Spotify queue.
Really?
Jesus, that is grim.
Yeah.
House parties in Mayo.
This is what's happening in Mayo.
You're going to the Green and Red and Mayo.
Well, it'll come on at some point once everybody's fairly on, and it's like, we'll stick this on, and everyone joins in, because it is a kind of...
That's grim, Cameron.
There's a slow, rousing...
What sort of house parties have you got? I feel it's
obviously
more
not the right
I
ones.
think that's that strange a thing, though. Like, it's your
Clare Island's a better old tune than us. Clare Island's a nicer tune.
The Westmeath Bachelor going on like at a house party in Athlone. It's like... It's not.
But like if those people have like an emotional connection to the song, like it's the sort of thing that gets sung at matches if you're on a night out in Dublin or you're in college in Galway or something and the song comes on. Like you have that little bit of ownership over it. So I don't think it's that strange. It's like, I don't know, you're from Dublin and the Old Triangle or something.
Yeah.
I can't count the amount of times I've been at house parties and people from Dublin start singing the Old Triangle.
But that's a credible folk song.
Or like Hills of Donegal as well.
Is some old like...
Well, funnily enough, the Fieldsvat and Rye did break out a few times Saturday, but it was like, so to my left were like, Allele Blue, Allele Blue. And then when the Fieldsvat and Rye broke out, it was kind of like, Lola. It's like, I don't really want to be seen. But it was like...
isn't very rousing.
I think a great summation of the French fans of the weekend, I watched the game in O'Donoghue's, and it was like mostly an Irish crowd. There was one table of French lads. There's like 6 or 7 of them maybe. The Marseillais started playing and they like gave us a rousing edition. It was great. Like I want to stand up and give them a clap. And then the 2 Irish anthems started playing and literally no one uttered a word.
Yeah.
And they were looking around so confused. And then when whatchamacallit, not Aronda V and Ireland's Call started playing, they just stood up and sang it themselves for us. And I was just like, this is kind of ridiculous that the French fans are there singing our national... Well,
we have a big problem here. Our national anthem is terrible. Like I'm into national anthems. Aranna Bhín is one of the worst national anthems known to man. It's not
from a musical
rousing.
Point of view.
From musical. Also, if we are committed to unification in this island, which I hope we are, we need to change the lyrics. I think because they're a little bit too militaristic. But in terms of the actual jingo of it, it's crap. It's absolutely terrible. Compare that to the Welsh national anthem, or Flower of Scotland, or the Marseillaise, or the Italian anthem, or even God Save the Queen, which is itself quite crap.
Quirky makes a very good point here on YouTube. Quirky 1980. Good morning to you. I find crowd engagement has slowly declined as more and more of the crowd are on their phones.
Yes, 100%.
Probably not a bad point.
100%.
Have we any more topics to get to?
No, I like this.
Okay, let's talk about this more.
I'm staying on this.
It's important because
this is the idea of the Firepit.
we're talking about your experiences of if you bring kids to a game. My memories of going to like Galway United games as a kid, a lot of them are about the noise and the atmosphere. I almost remember that more than the goals. And the atmosphere of the game sticks with you, and it really does rouse you. And if you go to a game, and I've made this point about race meetings as well now, if you go to a race meeting and nobody's cheering home the winner, why don't you watch it at home? What's the difference like? And I think atmosphere at a sporting events is partly the reason, one of the massive reasons why we do it.
I do think
Question for the room: what's the best sporting atmosphere then that you've ever been in? Like a match that you were like, wow, this is what sport is about.
I'd say Stade de France last year. And that's one of the one things I just can't square is that Irish fans away are brilliant. Like really get into it, really are part of the scene.
I know, but you get into a mode where we're telling people how to behave, and I think we were talking about it the other week with the phone, with taking the pictures of LeBron stuff. I feel sort of the same way. That I do think you can help affect fan culture, but I do I also think there's a slight weirdness telling people how to behave at a stadium.
Joe Canning's All-Ireland goal against Kilkenny, I don't think I've ever heard noise like it anywhere.
Okay.
Just everything about the goal, and I thought Joe's Lyrical Gale was incredible TV, but that goal was shown again. And I think an All-Ireland hurling final or 80,000 people in Croke Park for hurling is probably very hard to beat, even including Galatasaray.
Katie's 2012 fight in London for me, I think, is... I haven't done any great qualitative thought process on this, Kathleen. But
it broke the record, didn't it, for loudest ever
for everybody
crash.
leaving with tinnitus.
Yeah.
It was it's just exceptional for all. Like it was just the tenseness of it. I think you do need that. Like you can't, run it. Run it. It wasn't quite a run of the mill Six Nations game, but like it's you get one of them every 2 years in Dublin, and they happen. But a fight like that, where just the anticipation, the expectation, the desire from every Irish person in the what was it called, the something box arena or whatever it was.
Oh yeah,
it's been renamed since. Just the desire from everybody there, the investment in the outcome was just, I've never seen anything quite like it.
Here's one that'd be interesting, right? So the Bob Dylan gig in...
Let's get Kathleen's answer first.
Well, see, this is why I asked it, because I actually don't think I've ever been in an atmosphere where I've been like, this is insane. I think maybe I was at the Euros final last summer. I covered it, and I had like a moment where the teams were lining out, the crowd swelled, and like it was Wembley, packed out stadium, and I felt like emotional for a second because I was like, I actually never thought I was going to get to a game, and like I'd covered the whole Euros at that stage, and I was watching women play sport, and that for me was just like a real shiver moment. Like I got goosebumps, but that wasn't necessarily because of the crowd or the atmosphere. That was just because of the momentous occasion.
So you haven't heard that really amazing noise where you're like, oh
no,
my God.
I haven't had the proper kick in the stomach. This is an insane crowd. I'd love to go to a game in Germany. I think that's like
go to a game in Greece or go to like Turkey. Sorry before I interrupted, the Bob Dylan gig that I was at last year, no phones. Tommy Tiernan has gone no phones.
Oh yeah,
it's like they brought that in at sporting events. No phones.
You put your phone into a bag or something,
pouch, and you just.
But he's a cranky bollocks.
Bob
anyway.
Dylan.
Yeah, like he came out. Was it that gig or a different gig? He came out and he went. It must have been a different gig because there was phones at it, and he turned the lights off on the stage and put them on the crowd and said, right, you're not here to what was it? You're not here to video me. I'm here to play music. I'm like, I'm a huge Bob Dylan fan. I just think it's bullshit. If you're going to put on a concert, don't tell people how to behave at the concert. Let them come and enjoy the experience in the way that they've paid to come and enjoy it.
Well, it's funny
not up to you to decide.
That texture about phones, like it's funny now. Tourism and going on holiday is basically about going to another part of the world to see people on their phone. That's sadly the reality of it. Everywhere you go now, everyone's on their phone.
Yeah, but I definitely have an issue with telling people how. I felt the same about the LeBron thing the other week. People want to get the phones out and take the picture. Good luck to you. Like,
yeah, I saw your clip from that. Yeah, I'm with Shane Hannon.
But you don't tell other people how they should behave at the game.
Absolutely, you do.
Like you're entitled to disagree with what they do, and it might not be for you.
You defended the girl blocking the guy behind her.
I didn't quite defend it. I was trying to be
the bloody line out.
I was trying to be. It's the
photo, probably for anybody who's ever been at a rugby match,
photographing the line out when it's close to you. It's. I feel if I'm at a rugby game and I've been to plenty and a line out was happening close to me, I'm like, I just can't resist the temptation of getting the phone
You're a
out.
disgrace.
I'm like, oh my
You're a
God.
disgrace for a man of your age. You're an
You go
absolute
through my
disgrace.
photo reel there, you'll find every second photograph is a line out.
We have a great comment in here from a regular listener, Mr. Shane Hannon,
Why's
on
that name
YouTube,
familiar?
being like, more unpatriotic nonsense. Put some respect on our Navian. Shane from Monaghan, en route to Antrim. Big fan of the show. Thumbs up.
Well, at least he hasn't mentioned Malachy O'Rourke, so that's...
But you just did, so you've just done the
that's
job
true,
for
that
him
is
now.
true.
He's going to be absolutely delighted. He's definitely
Damn it.
smiling away to himself in the car right now.
He wins. So you've never been to an atmosphere that you felt... And is that just because you're engaged with the game? I find if you, like, there are games where I've been, like, totally enthralled and I can't tell you anything about what the atmosphere was like.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's that. I just think maybe I probably haven't gone to enough games as well. Like, I'm probably new enough to the game going. Like, when I was growing up, it wasn't a big thing. Like, my dad and I would always watch sport together, but we wouldn't necessarily, like, travel to go see the Premier League or any of that sort of thing. So I probably just haven't been to enough big games to really feel like this is a momentous thing. And my other thing as well is that, like, the teams I support, a lot of my friends don't watch sport or aren't interested in sport. So when I do go to things, I'm kind of going by myself, or else I'm going with people who aren't all that interested and are kind of just there for the crack, which is, like, fair enough. Do your thing. I don't care about that. But you're probably just not getting that whole proper, you know, match day experience, the build up. And a lot of the time, I probably find I get better atmospheres if I'm watching it with, like, a crowd of fans in a pub or, like, in a house or something.
Yeah.
I've probably had better experiences then. Like, my mum used to do this thing during the Six Nations. One of their, like, very good friends at home is from England. So whenever the Six Nations would come around and Ireland were playing England, they'd all come round to our house, and we had this, like, big chair, and she'd decorate it with loads of, like, England flags and, like, hang little ribbons off it and stuff, and force Will to sit in it for the entire thing. While everyone else around them was shouting for Ireland, and he would just sit in this massive throne in the middle of our house, which is quite funny because my parents are from the north and would be of the Republican persuasion, so it was entertaining for everyone involved.
Republican persuasion, I like that.
Eamon O'Line on YouTube says, best atmosphere ever was Croke Park 2007, Ireland against England. Been to most stadiums globally and nothing compared to that. The noise, the passion, and the history was like a stadium when went to war. Do you know, I was at the game, and I would say that that's all true, but it was the lack of noise around the anthems, just with the silence, how respectfully it was.
The power of silence. That was one of the most iconic. Yeah.
I've lost it somewhere here, but someone commented earlier that atmosphere isn't just about singing, which is a good point as well.
Yeah, no, that's it. And maybe that's just my narrow definition of what a good fan is. I feel like that's probably, you know, part of it is that I can't, like, why aren't you singing?
Yeah, I was like that when I was younger, and I guess as you do get older, like Adrian has alluded to, you're more inclined to, like, give out about the fellas standing in front of you now. You know, old man.
A lot of this stuff taps back into, like, telling other people what to do. It's like we've a bizarre obsession with how other people go and enjoy the game on your own terms.
Yeah.
That's a hill I'm willing to pass out on.
Yeah,
that's fair.
Well, like, I get kind of annoyed when, say, people are talking, and I know you guys mentioned it at the top of the show, about the rugby and the fact that there's a lot of people there who might not necessarily be, like, all-time rugby fans. And I'm like, it's kind of fair enough if they want to go. Like, there are plenty of other solutions, aka not pricing people out of it, or, you know, I don't know, putting tickets through clubs a bit more rather than general release, if you want to maybe make sure that fans, proper fans, don't even like that word, but, like, fans who watch every single game of rugby actually get tickets. I hate this whole sort of notion of rugby has done a very good job at marketing itself to a larger audience, and people who maybe only watch the Six Nations or only watch the Champions Cup final or whatever, that they're not entitled to go and enjoy the game in the way they want to enjoy it, whether that's just, you know, having a couple of pints, going to the match, like meeting friends afterwards. That's fine. Like, I think there is something very hoity-toity, like, looking down your nose on those sort of fans, and I don't think that's fair.
Question for the three of you,
totally
right?
agree with that.
What percentage of Irish supporters at the game Saturday understand the rules of rugby?
But that's, I think, Kathleen's point. That's none of your business. Like, who cares?
It was interesting. Like, you go to a game, I would be of the percentage who do not fully understand the rules of rugby and never have.
But I think the same. Do you know, it's a really interesting point, and I think that the same. If you stood outside Croke Park on Ireland Final Day and asked people going in, name 2-3 players from either side, you get a whole pile of people who just can't, because they're there for the event or whatever, but they're no less entitled to be at the match than anybody else. Like
I think that's absolutely wrong.
How you marry the people who've been at the McGrath Cup games or the FBD League or whatever with making sure that that team then gets, that doesn't seem like an overly complex issue, nor is it an especially big. You're not dealing with a huge number of people. Like, you go to a bloody National League match, never mind about FBD League or McGrath Cup, and you won't get a whole pile of people at it. It would be very easy to be able to, in a GA context, say you were at 3 games in the league, or you were at 2 McGrath Cup games, whatever it might be, so you're going to get first dibs on these pile of tickets over. You wouldn't be dealing with a huge number of people, which would address that thing. I actually don't think it would overly address the broader issue about atmospheres at games and stuff, because those people are, like, you know,
there's also something really nice about bringing someone along to a sport who might not be all that interested in it, and like showing it to them and explaining the rules if they don't understand it. Like, as I said before, a lot of my friends don't watch sport, but like they come along to games with me, and it's nice explaining to them, like, oh, that everyone's cheering for them because they're like the best player, or this is what's happening here. It's a very different match day experience, but I don't think it should be discounted as like a bad one or one that
if you extend out Johnny's question about Bob Dylan and say, all right, like, you know, how much Bob Dylan have you listened to the last 6 months? That's a bullshit criteria.
I'm not even a massive Dylan fan, so there we go.
The gatekeeping drives me insane. I really find that very frustrating. It's like, that could be the thing that actually ignites your passion if you're in a crowd and you're allowed to enjoy it your own way. If someone's going, well, you know, what do you know? And asking for your tactical insight, and do you really understand what happened there? That really annoys me. Yeah, I guess we really haven't solved how to solve the
I don't think we're ever going to solve anything with
I think,
it's worth doing nevertheless. I did want to mention, we're not going to get into it, but the Netflix documentaries, I'm going to keep that topic on the agenda. Kathleen doesn't want to talk about it, so I'm going to keep it on the agenda.
All right, we can fight about it another day.
Kathleen can put a strike through on it on the running order, which is totally fair. I gave the full swing, what's it called? Full swing. Yeah. I go during the week and I watched the first 2 episodes. Halfway through the first episode, I thought, right, that's it. I'm out of here. Turn this off. But I kept with it, and I initially put the topic in by way of there are too many fly in the wall documentaries out there. I take it back. It's well worth watching.
Yeah.
Nathan said something very different yesterday morning.
Well, you see, he's a golf geek. I'm like a chewing gum fan. I am one of the people we've just been discussing.
I've no desire to watch.
The main takeaway is that you're listening to the Green Red Mayo at house parties. That's
fair.
Exactly. But well done. Thanks a million for coming in, Cameron.
Thank you very much.
Kathleen, thank you. Johnny, pleasure as always. We shoehorned in loads of League of Ireland chat there this morning. You must be happy with that.
Not sure about that.
9:35. We're brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Monday's show. Quinny, Anthony Moyles, the world-renowned Gillette Labs performance rankings, plenty more as well. But right now it's Declan Bogue, who was on with Richie last night ahead of the GA Congress, which begins today, runs into the weekend, discussing the tension between Pat Tehan, Jarlath Burns, who was of course on the show yesterday as well, and Niall Erskine, all who are aiming to succeed Larry McCarthy. Farewell, my friends.
This time tomorrow night, we should be in the process of finding out who the next president of the GAA will be. There are 3 candidates up for the big job to replace Larry McCarthy. They are Jarlath Burns, Niall Erskine, and also Pat Tehan from Offaly. Looking forward to the Clore in general and that big vote tomorrow night. I'm delighted to say we're joined on the line by Declan Bogue. Declan, very welcome back to the show.
Good evening.
Good evening. It's obviously the big job that's up for grabs tomorrow night, and Jarlath Burns, I guess, is probably the man who's taken all the headlines because he's been here before, and he was narrowly pipped, of course, the last election by Larry McCarthy. And the expectation is that, you know, such as the second-time candidature, that he will get in. Don't know if it's necessarily guaranteed when you look at the lay of the land and where the other candidates are coming from.
Nothing's guaranteed, of course, and when you say where they're coming from, you know that can mean many things. It can mean where they're politically aligned, like as such, with a small p, just who they've been working with in the GA, where their loyalties lie, and you know the logic should follow that. For example, someone like Noel Erskine, he should get the overseas vote, having put so many years in overseas and having so much experience. So much experience Niall has had, like in all the different places he's worked in Europe and Britain and so on. But that's not guaranteed. Even at that, then where does his transfers go to? Does it go to Pat Tehan? Does it go to Jarlath? with his presumably he'll be getting some of Donegal's votes, if not, and if not all. And like, where do the transfers go there? So look, nothing's guaranteed, but much as the first rule of politics is learn how to count. Having spoken to the people that keep a serious eye on these things, they would be pretty confident that Jarlath has done his counting right this time.
Yeah, listening to him, he was on OTB AM this morning, and it was almost like a throwaway line whereby he was talking about trying to garner his support and rally the votes and all that kind of stuff. And his initial conversations this time round around Ulster were of the nature of, listen, the Ulster county's telling them, don't worry about us, you have our vote, go and sort out your numbers elsewhere. And I think that's where it's going to be won and lost. But I think when you mentioned Niall Erskine, like, what can't be overlooked is that World GAA I guess net, because it takes in so many different territories now, and most importantly takes in so many votes. I think it's in around the region 73 votes of the total were made up of that world conglomerate last time. This time around it's in around the same, and that's again a significant number to try and corral into a consensus.
Yes, and I mean, you know, it becomes most apparent when Larry McCarthy, who was the first overseas, if you want to call him that, president, happens, because he spent his working life in New York and so on. So obviously he was going to get the overseas vote and so on, and then probably some kind of transfers would have went his way too. I don't think it's going to be as big a concern this time. But yes, Niall Erskine can be seen as an overseas candidate, but not really. It's not as explicit as it was last time for Larry. Definitely, it is. It's a hard thing to predict where they might go. But I mean, they tend to go where the closest that they can get to the power. Because anytime that there's a vote on any contentious issue in Congress, they tend to go with the Conservative point of view, because then they don't want to rock any votes with the establishment in Croke Park as such, and they can't, because that is what they rely on for funding and so on, same as everybody else. But like, you know, county boards are probably a bit more renegade in that respect, but in general overseas units just go with whatever status quo or the most conservative line is. There's no certainty where they're going to go, but you know, they may not need, Jarlath may not need, but he also made a compelling case to some delegates from overseas, as one of them told me about, you know.
What's the feeling out there as regards Jarlath's run this time around? Because I know you wrote about him back in 2020 when he was up against Larry McCarthy and a couple other candidates as well. This time the field is narrower, and he has that experience of having to try and press the flesh and go to these different counties and go to the different boards and try and get support on board. Has his view on the position changed in any way in those intervening 3 years?
It's a really interesting thing that you say there. And you know what? I would imagine that Jarlath Burns is... it would have stung. Absolutely. It would have stung 3 years ago when he didn't get the vote, and he would have felt that he had achieved an awful lot and put a serious amount of his life into the GA, and then not to become the GA president. But I'll tell you what, he dodged some bullet at that point, because... you know, Larry McCarthy, he won it, and possibly in the past it mightn't be entirely fair, but his job was remarkably complicated because he went straight into the job, and then the pandemic arrived, and you know, it wasn't even a matter of getting your feet under the table or treading water. You're into instantly capsizing situation. There was uncertainty over when any games might be played again in the entire calendar year. Made a decision then to go with club first. All these radical things that just were landing on his desk from day one. So if he had a vision, if he had sort of, well, I wanted to have this and that, and I want to achieve this by the time I'm finished as president. Really, he hadn't a hope from day one as soon as COVID arrived, because it was all about bailing water. It was all about getting the 2020 championship played behind closed doors, most eerie thing that you'd ever see, an All-Ireland final in Empty Croke Park and so on, and we had it 2 weekends in a row. But you know what? He was on a hiding to nothing, really, like for the most part of that. While Jarlath may have been stung at that time, I would say he has learned an awful lot more in the intervening years. He has probably got, as he said, you know, when he was going back to these county boards now, there was with a sense of familiarity, because a lot of them, you know, there was a time where he was kind of frozen out of the Croke Park scene after having fulfilled so many duties, like, you know, one of the first players rep on that, you know, player council. He headed up the 125 anniversary celebrations, and he was in some ways a right hand man of sorts for Pádraig Duffy when he was the Director General. And they went from that, really, and a different sort of feeling came over Croke Park after that, and he was sort of frozen out. So an awful lot of the people that he was going to may not have been entirely familiar with him. He wouldn't have the same breadth and sort of, certainly maybe not have done as much as a Pat Tehan on Croke Park committees. But, you know, he doesn't take anything for granted this time, I'd say. And when he's going back to people, he's able to say how much further on he is with his own understanding and where he thinks he can take things. Because the GAA has changed even incredible amount, even in the 3 years. Like, you know, team expenditure and all that was always high. Now it's reaching tremendous levels altogether. Like, you know, the issue of pay for play, you know, he's willing to go there. And also, since Brexit has festered and developed and so on, like, you know, it puts him in a position where he is acutely aware of the political changes that are going to affect Ireland, Northern Ireland, Britain, whatever you want to call the relationship we have with them over the next number of years, because it's going to be seismic one way or another. If the status quo is retained and, like, you know, Brexit becomes a fact of life and an irreversible thing, at least Jarlath Burns has got a good hand on living on the border, and the GAA, as he has said, like, it needs a seat on government planning, like strategic reviews and all that. It can't be just that Irish government go way off and do something without the biggest community driving association or organisation in the country by far, without having some kind of influence. And at least he appreciates that. Whereas I don't know if the other candidates would exactly relish that.
There's a bigness about a lot of the responsibilities involved in the GAA presidency that makes me wonder, is that 3-year span long enough to get the stuff that Jarlath Burns wants to do done, or the things that we perceive that he even might want to get done within that time frame? Because working in lockstep with governments, developing those relationships, and I mean, like, on both sides of the border, to have people involved with the executive as well, to see what might go on with the development of Casement Park is obviously going to be a huge thing over the next 3 years as well, and whether that happens or not. Is a 3-year term for what he wants to do long enough? And is it ill-fitting for him to be looking for the role of GAA president when there might be other roles necessarily within the GAA that could suit his outlook better?
Yes, but, well, Director General is a role that came up, and you know, Jarlath wasn't interested in that. Liam Sheedy was interested, and other people were interested, and Tom Ryan got it, and fair play to him. And a 3-year term, it's something, you know what, you're the first person I've heard questioning that, the length of tenure. Perhaps 5 years is a far more suitable time frame. But, like, you know, when you talk about 3 years, 3 years is a damn long time. Like, if you have a wish list, and really, like, you have to remember that the president, in some respects, is quite a limited, narrow focus. And, you know, there's a strategic review already in place that runs to 2026. And, you know, can he alter a huge amount, or can he staple on 3 or 4 things onto that to say, I want to have that done by this year? Like, you can't really, like, that's unworkable. But there are certain things that you look at in the GAA and they just drag and drag and drag, because I'm not particularly sure that people have the want to get their teeth really into it. Like the whole issue of integration. And I know that so many administrators have said, if you're starting the GAA today, well, then you wouldn't have a ladies' association, you wouldn't have Camogie, so it'd all be under the one umbrella. And like, how long has this been talked about and floated and mooted and committee set up? And, Mary Magalhaes named as the new person. And now, like in the last week, they've sent out, I think we'll all have a big survey about this to see if it's workable or what people think about integration. I mean, my God, like, Jesus Christ, how long is this thing going to go until there actually are hard decisions made? I honestly believe that there's a serious amount of a can being kicked down the road here, because the moment that you do fully integrate and then you have your GPA that is both male and female, well then, look, you see those grants, you see all the monthly expenses the players are entitled to, that will have to be split in two. And it'll be interesting to see how people react to that when that happens. And when you're also being told that a facility is every bit available to ladies as it is the men's. Up until now, it's been fine. And there has been, no, it hasn't been fine. Sorry, before anyone jumps down my throat about that, but it hasn't been fine. But there was an acceptance among the men that they would take precedence, and women have had to fight against that. But the moment that becomes official then, and it is 50-50, there will be war in clubs and in county boards and stuff like that. And it is my firm belief that the people who have been overseeing this so far are a little bit frightened of the buyer's remorse if it comes to pass.
It's a case of once that lever has been, drawn down, I guess there's no putting it back up. And there's even little things like you touched on there with the facilities, as Jarlath framed them this morning, the assets surrounding a club. Like most clubs, he says, like obviously as you mentioned there, if you're setting up the GAA now, it would be inconceivable that women wouldn't be involved. Similarly, he says he doesn't know many clubs that aren't fully integrated already. But then he mentioned the assets, and then he mentioned, that as soon as that capital A came out, I was like, oh, that's going to be a sticking point, because that they're lifelong kind of habits and traditions, and well, this has always been the way, and that's kind of the thing that's always stood in the GAA's way in a lot of things, is that because something has always been the way, to try and change that culture is a very, very difficult thing to bring about for the entirety of the association.
Absolutely, it is just one of these things. It sounds great, and people will always say, and when I say it sounds great, it is just the way it should be. But it just happens to be that the moment that you do actually say, right, okay, this is all implemented on January the 1st, 2024, we are equal. That's it. And then you turn around and county players that say, well, I got €157 a week last year for my expenses, and now it's cut to €73. What's that about? Oh, well, that goes to the left half forward on the Armagh ladies team now. There will be uproar, because players, as we've seen this week, they get very touchy about their expenses and stuff like that. But anyway, that's just one example. Another example was the whole notion of Casement Park has been talked about for years. And, this is long before any COVID or the further sort of political rows and manoeuvrings that has happened around Casement Park. On Larry McCarthy's appointment, he gave a Zoom interview. I was on it, and I asked him the question about Casement Park, and he said that it was no further up the list of priorities for the GAA than the grounds at Drogheda or Navan, and he named out two or three others. So, and his tenure has come, and it has gone, and there hasn't been a thing really done about Casement Park. So, there are difficult things, and presidents look at, and some of them just say, do you know what, I'm not going to get involved, not at all. That's not for me, because sometimes it's lose-lose.
Well, can the role of GAA president, because there was one visual that stood out from the annual reports presentation at Croke Park a couple of weeks ago now. And it was when the whole issue of Crokes and Glenn came up, and it almost seemed as if Larry didn't want to get into addressing the situation, and it was up to Tom Ryan to really offer the meat and potatoes of the actual decision making that went on behind the scenes. And that kind of seemed to be, in microcosm, I guess, the relationship between president and DG is that they, the DG actually gets their hands dirty and has to deal with all this kind of stuff, whereas the president is more of a ambassadorial kind of role. And can you redefine that in the short space of time that you have to operate as president, I guess?
Yes, but I will pick up one thing that you say. It's the DG's job to get his hands dirty. But the DG's answer on that day was, no, I can't get involved, or we can't talk about that because the rules apply to a Kerry Junior D football championship, I think, game that he referenced. He says, I can't lift the phone and say, let's get this sorted out. But the Kerry Junior D championship is down to the Kerry County Board to sort out. When it comes to an All-Ireland final, to not make a comment, to me, it's just, to me and to anybody else I've talked to about this and asked their own opinion without fear or favour, they just all say it was just completely washing their hands of it. I mean, it's just a ridiculous thing to say, oh, no, this row can occur, and we won't even allow one of our spokespeople to explain it to the country. Go on radio. Marty Morrissey, off the ball. Any people would be absolutely delighted to broadcast a GA figure explaining calmly to any host what the situation is, and that would have been enough. But to say nothing and then to turn around when you're asked about it, not address it whatsoever until you're directly asked about it and say and pull up an example that is not relevant, to me it's just not good enough. But it does go to the point that you make, President, limited enough. But at the same time, you want someone there with the microphone who will be able to give a good account of themselves, will be able to explain it, will be able to talk in the language of the normal person in the GA that understands it, rather than just what we have now, which is just, people talk about the disconnect, and I always rail against that, about a disconnect between the club GA and GA politicians, if you want to call it that, or the top brass, Croke Park. I've never bought that. I don't like that, because I happen to know a lot of people who work for the GA and in the GA, and they are dedicated GA people. If Jarlath Burns couldn't, you couldn't meet a more dedicated, and that goes for the full-time staff in Croke Park. It's not fair, but the perception is there that there is a disconnect. That needs healed. That does need healed, and Jarlath Burns is perfect for that. It's a massive positive for him because he appreciates the political circumstances. He can see things coming that, with the best will in the world, I just can't see Pat Tehan having the same level of political sophistication when it comes to the North as Jarlath's lived experience shows. Yeah. And even Niall, as experienced as he is, he has spent a serious portion of his adult life away working. He would appreciate overseas GA better than Jarlath would, but at the same time, this is a home job now. This is a job now. When they come on Friday night, they have to think about this as Ireland politically is in turmoil. We need someone who appreciates the situation and that has garnered huge respect in the unionist community here, that can deliver our message and that openly embraces them, is not afraid to say, it also recognises the fact is there are some within that number that will never ever have anything to do with the GA, because it's almost like their identity in itself is we are anti this, we are anti that, we are anti GA. But at least we would have someone that knows that recognises that, has spoken to those people.
Finally, on Larry McCarthy, obviously who's going to be the outgoing president in a year's time. What is his legacy? Because I'm getting kind of dual notes from you over the course of the last 20 odd minutes, whereby the COVID thing landed in his lap, and that's something that had to be dealt with, and there was a lot of bailing water, as you put it, had to be done. But there's also areas that could have been done better, is the sense I'm getting.
Look at just a general communication, maybe. haven't sat down to really make a full assessment of that, right? And I've been on this show before and referred to him as a ribbon cutter, and that just really kind of unfair of me. That's not right. That kind of language is really it's nasty, to be honest with me. But at the same time, and I don't know. I am only can speak here as a club volunteer, okay? And this is, because I'm involved in underage hurling in Tyrone, which is fairly unglamorous, but as you might imagine. But there is someone like, and I don't know whose decision this falls down to, whose office this comes across, but someone like Martin Fogarty of Kilkenny, that was a former coach under Brian Cody. He had the job of national hurling director for a 5-year term. He was keen to continue it, right? And the job that he did in establishing like cross-county leagues, Ulster-wide leagues, so that like brand new adult teams could spring out of nowhere and start playing hurling. And there was no shame in it, because you weren't getting beat by 30 points every week, because you would find another couple of teams your age. And it was graded superbly. And we were able to enter a team in adult hurling, in an area where there had never been adult hurling in Tyrone before. Martin Fogarty, simply put, did more for Ulster hurling or Connacht hurling in the last 50 years. There's no comparison. There's not a single figure that you could say that did and achieved what Martin Fogarty did. His contract ran out. He was keen to continue. He made that known, and it wasn't renewed. And you can say that that's a small. Look at all the things that these people have to deal with. Like they have to deal with Kisman Park and integration and all that, and all those things are up in the air, swirling around up there somewhere, but nothing's been done on them. This is a very direct thing, a small, like people might say, small thing. Maybe it is a small thing, but I'll tell you what, the job that he did was absolutely enormous. Absolutely enormous. And how was he thanked? His contract was let run out, and he was said, "Thanks very much, Martin, off you go."
Is that down fully to the president?
Probably not. But do you not think it's something that he might have noticed or picked up on, or had some kind of an idea that this was coming to an end? Or, the GA's own websites carried many, many articles praising the work that Martin Fogarty was doing. And, again, you can say, actually, what odds? You can draw a line between Dublin and Galway and say that's the Mason-Dixon line of hurling. But for some people, hurling is their preferred sport, right? And, especially in us, there's just been let rot. And as Dennis Walsh once said, nobody up here, Ulster councils and stuff like that, successive Ulster councils have come and gone, and nobody wore it as a stain on their conscience. Nobody. Some might have been slightly disappointed, but in general, people just let it all wash over them and say, actually, that's hurlers. They just do complaints. But then when you got someone with dynamism that was out on the road all the time, you had an asset there. And don't tell me that nobody in Croke Park couldn't see that, and they couldn't, because it was all splashed all over their website in long pieces.
Listen, it's going to be an interesting weekend. It all kicks off tomorrow night, obviously, with that vote for the presidency. Declan Bogue, thanks so much for joining us this evening.
OTB AM with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.